across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Thank you to Jonathan right here on Talk. Loads to get through, of course. In particular, really interested in this one, by the way. More domestic matters. We've got a whole range of stuff. But on this specific issue, Keir Starmer's allies are planning to block Andy Burnham for running for Parliament in a Manchester by-election. This is Andrew Gwynn, of course, the Labour MP for Gorton and Denton, said on Thursday he would stand down. And lots going on as to reasons why. Health reasons, apparently, but there were some WhatsApp issues. Nonetheless, that isn't really the story. The story here is Andy Burnham. Could he, would he change Labour's luck? Is he the man to turn it all around? We'll have details on that. Also this afternoon, Labour announcing plans to deny 4.5 million people a vote, of course, with two of Britain's biggest councils allowed to delay elections. Tory-controlled Suffolk and Norfolk were among 29 authorities to give permission to cancel May's ballot. This is scandalous no matter who you are, left-wing, right-wing, whatever. There were elections penciled in. They should happen. I don't care if there's more to come in 18 months, 2 years' time. Elections were promised. Elections should happen. And President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, showed off a Gaza master plan on Thursday that includes coastal tourism corridors with high-rises, as he revealed work is already underway to rebuild the war-torn area. The real estate boys are moving in, it seems. What is going on there? Details to come. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. 1:05. Let me take you back here. In 2001, a fella called Andy Burnham became the MP for Lee in Greater Manchester. He was young, he was seen as very smart, very ambitious as well. It was set to be an impressive moment for the working class lad from Liverpool. He went on, of course, to become the Culture Secretary.
I think in the short time that it has existed, Ofcom has been incredibly successful in establishing an authority and a clear lead on these important issues.
He looks about 12 there. Gordon Brown, the Prime Minister at the time, liked the cut of his jib, thought this man is going places and promoted him to Health Secretary.
In recent weeks, we have discovered a great deal more about the swine flu virus. Whilst it has spread quickly, the virus has not become more dangerous. For the vast majority, swine flu remains a mild and self-limiting illness.
Thank you very much. I've forgotten all about swine flu. He played a good game, of course. He even spent time in the Treasury, by the way. And, of course, despite Labour getting booted out in 2010, he remained an MP until 2017. But, and there was a big but here, the backbenches were not for our Andy. He decided that being a bigger fish in a smaller pond was a better option.
This is the dawn of a new era, not just for this city region, but for politics in our country. It has been too London-centric for too long. The old political and party structures haven't delivered for all people and for all places. They have created this crisis in politics, which we are living through now. And you know what? We could hold as many general elections as we like, and that will never solve the problem.
That was 2017. He became Mayor of Manchester, an absolutely stonking result. He got almost triple the number of votes of his nearest Tory rival. But there was also a sense that this man, Andy Burnham, wanted more. I mean, it was no secret. He had his eyes on the biggest prize. Let's be honest, Andy Burnham wants to be Prime Minister. And yesterday, the first block fell potentially into place. This was the Labour MP Andrew Gwynn announced he was stepping down. Ordinarily, a bloke that no one's ever heard of. This would be big news. That wouldn't be big news, but of course it is now big news. This could be Andy Burnham's way back, the path to power, first past the base to number 10. Will he take it? Will the Labour Party back him? And if they do, will he ultimately make Labour electable again? Can Andy Burnham save the Labour Party? I doubt many of you, by the way, would vote for Andy Burnham, but can he unite Labour? Can he unite the left? Think of all those sizzling Green voters who might come running back and ensure that the Socialists get back into power come 2029. Will Burnham change Labour's luck? 0344 499 1000. Now, as Jonathan Gullis was saying, there is a mountain to climb because he needs a lot of backing for this. He has to ask Labour's National Executive Committee for permission. This is the body, the party's rule book, sets out the details of what can. It must give express permission before directly elected mayors can seek nomination as a Labour candidate for elections in Westminster. And will the National Executive, knowing what it's likely to happen, that he could become a challenger to Keir Starmer down the line, will they do this? So the party could turn around and say no on the grounds, if nothing else, that a mayoral election, because they'd have to have one of those then, would be expensive and potentially politically fatal. So they've got that to deal with. So even if he wins the by-election, if they allow him to do it, that leaves a mayoral election to deal with as well. So there's loads of things that have to fall into place. But look at it this way. Look at the ineptitude of this government. Look at the year and a half that Keir Starmer has had in number 10. It has been woeful, and that's being polite. There is no one who objectively could look at this administration and say, God, they're good. I don't think anybody, even die-hard Labour supporters, are screaming and howling at the moon at what has happened to their once proud party. This is a mess. Everything around us is a mess. Someone needs to put it back together again. Is Andy Burnham the man? If this is your neck of the woods, just give us an overview of, I guess, how you think he's done as the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Do you think he's really shown how things could be done on a bigger level? Is he the man you could trust? But more poignantly, is this the bloke that could actually turn Labour's fortunes around? Is this the man that could finally change Labour's luck? 0344 499 1000. Would it make a difference? And you've got to bear in mind that much of this is dependent on the May elections, despite what has happened, where some elections have been stolen from the ballot, not the result, because it will never get that far. The actual election has been stolen. They've gone, they've cancelled them. Nonetheless, still some really significant elections to come in May. And all the bookmakers say that Keir Starmer is going to take an almighty pasting on the 7th of May. It's about 15 weeks away, by the way. Pretty close. An almighty public kicking in the name of democracy. And if that happens, if Burnham was back in Parliament, that's when people start to get itchy on the Labour benches. That's when loyalties begin to divide. That's when voters begin to think we need to change the driver. That's when Andy Burnham could become the Prime Minister. Would it make a jot of difference, bearing in mind the backdrop of ineptitude, everything we've seen in the last 18 months, I mean, the horror show of U-turns, and that's just the obvious stuff. Would it make any difference? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Charlie Downs is with us, campaign director with Restore Britain. Charlie, good afternoon to you. Are the Socialists about to make an almighty comeback courtesy of Andy Burnham?
Well, it's interesting you use that word, Ian, because to this day, Andy Burnham does actually identify himself as a socialist, which is actually more than can be said of a lot of people in the modern Labour Party. I think certainly since Blair, there has been a fear around using that word, despite the fact that until Blair, it was in the party's constitution. The objective of the party was to bring about socialism in the United Kingdom. And so in a way, I actually appreciate the ideological honesty and clarity that Andy Burnham seems to offer, because you compare him to Starmer, who is a man who, as you've just said, has, U-turned so many times over his premiership, that nobody seems to know what he actually stands for. I mean, before he was Prime Minister, he was, before he was a politician, he was a world-famous human rights lawyer. And, I mean, that doesn't fill me with a huge amount of confidence, because human rights, the doctrine of human rights seems to be at the root of so many of our problems as a civilization. But nevertheless, he doesn't even seem to know what that means in this day, Keir Starmer. He seems to just blow with the wind. And so it would be actually refreshing to see somebody who has some degree of ideological consistency, integrity, purity enter the House of Commons. And actually, based on recent polling, I think that Burnham could be a real threat, not just to Starmer and becoming leader of the Labour Party, but actually to Farage. Because I think it's important always to look not at the approval ratings of politicians, but at the disapproval ratings, because it's rare for a politician to be broadly liked. But what's more common is for a politician to be broadly disliked. So Starmer, for example, is currently sitting on a disapproval rating of 63%, which is incredibly high. I mean, people absolutely hate him. But Farage, although he is more liked than Starmer, his level of dislike is actually not that far off. He's sitting at about 55%. Whereas you look at Burnham, and nationwide, his disapproval rating is just 24%, which is actually very low, especially for a Labour Party politician. So I think it's entirely possible that Burnham could be the man to save Labour from its current woes. Whether he will be allowed to do so, however, is the next question. Because I know from talking to a friend of mine recently who is in the Conservative Party, who's currently going through the selection process to be the candidate for the general election in his seat, the number of hoops you have to jump through to get the selection in that party is absolutely astonishing. And so much of it, it's dressed up as compliance and, kind of, you're sort of presenting your work history, your experience, and all the rest of it. But so much of it is actually testing for loyalty to the people who actually currently govern the party, as opposed to, loyalty to the ideology of conservatism, loyalty indeed to the country. And by the sounds of it, the Labour selection process is very similar. It sounds as though it is very much an exercise in friend-enemy politics from the perspective of the current leadership of the party. So whether he will actually be permitted to do so, I think, is very much remains to be seen. My gut says he probably won't be, because Starmer, as we know since his ousting of the Corbynites, exercises an iron fist over his party. And I can't imagine he would voluntarily allow in somebody who is so self-evidently a threat to his position as Burnham.
Well, indeed. And of course, the Executive Committee have to give that the go-ahead, and they'll be making all of those calculations as well. And if, word gets out that, Keir Starmer and others think this will be a terrible thing to do, they can block it. And it's an extraordinary way they do business, but each party has their own way of doing things. It's been the case for a while. So he could be blocked at the first hurdle. It never goes any further. And then, of course, he takes a risk by putting himself forward, which sort of dilutes to the electorate his interests in Greater Manchester as a mayor. You don't really want to be our mayor, because half an hour ago you were going to leg it. But now you're not allowed to. You suddenly want to be mayor again. So that could cause him some problem. I would add, Charlie, to this. Everyone's talking about this young pretender. He's not that young anymore, Andy Burnham, not in the clips we were just showing, which was from like a decade and a half ago. It's just Andy Burnham. It's not Gandhi, for God's sake. It's not Jesus that's coming from the hills. It's Andy Burnham. I mean, he's all right, but, since when did Andy Burnham make top tier when it comes to politicos that everybody admires?
Well, what does this say about the calibre of the rest of the leadership of the Labour Party, and indeed on the landscape more generally? I think that the calibre of our politicians has declined massively over the past few decades, certainly, which is to say nothing of the past couple of centuries. And so a guy like Andy Burnham, who, he's sort of reasonably charismatic. If he had a top trump card, he'd score quite well on charisma, reasonably well on strategy. As I said before, he's quite well liked among a great number of people, including Reform voters, by the way. 23% of Reform voters who voted for Reform in 2024 approve of him. They like it.
Wow.
And it's because he comes across, you just showed those clips from 2010 and so on. And I've been watching clips of him this morning. Like, he comes across as just a fairly relatable kind of guy. I imagine that is all an act, because he is a politician at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But again, you contrast that with somebody like Starmer, somebody like Rachel Reeves, even somebody like Kemi Badenoch. And these are not people who feel that I certainly don't feel like I can relate to these people. I don't know. I don't feel like I have anything in common with these people. They seem to exist in a world that's very distant from my own.
Yeah.
And I think a huge number of people in the country feel the same way about the crop of politicians that's currently on offer. And so a guy like Andy Burnham, the fact that he's just a single degree away from that, like ever so slightly different, I think is like a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. Now, I think it should be made clear that I think Burnham would nevertheless be a disaster for the country, because, as I said, he is a socialist, and I think socialism is the last thing this country needs. I'm very sceptical of capitalism, as we've discussed before, Ian, but I think full-on sort of 1970s style socialism, which I think is really what Burnham represents.
Yeah.
If you read his 2010 leadership manifesto, he's talking about a 10% inheritance tax on all estates, by the way, not just those over a certain value. massive buy-ups of council housing from for local councils, all these sorts of things which on paper sound lovely and will probably lead to him being able to buy votes off of people, purchase votes off of people. But if they were actually implemented, I think would be disastrous for our already flagging economy. So yeah, I mean, I think it's purely an effect of charisma that he has, the kind of that he's getting the attention.
Yeah,
that he's getting.
I think you're right. He's, as you say, he's a working class lad from Liverpool. He's relatable. He sounds relatable. Keir Starmer is the very antithesis of relatable. How you find yourself in that job without the. I mean, there's a parameter out there, isn't there, for what passes as somebody who's got that kind of charismatic gene to become the prime. Even if you don't like them, you can sometimes go, right, she's got it or he's got it, they haven't got it, they have got it. Starmer, I don't know how Starmer found himself in that place. It's the one bit they forgot of the jigsaw puzzle when they were deciding that Keir Starmer was going to be their man, that he doesn't have a personality. I think that's a slight problem when you're standing to be the Prime Minister. Andy Burnham does, but of course he's still Andy Burnham, and as you rightly say, there's a lot of left-wing stuff in there. Arguably that's a nod to the Corbynites, it's a nod to the Green Party, wants to hoover up that vote that has largely split elements of the Labour Party. So we can kind of see what he's doing, but will he change the luck of the Labour Party? If you're... stay with us, Charlie, we're going to come back for more from Charlie Downs in a few moments, because we can get onto those elections as well. I know Reform voters will be very grumpy about those elections that are being cancelled. But in terms of Andy Burnham, I mean, I do have to repeat that. It's only Andy Burnham, for God's sake. I mean, this is not, some great knight in shining political armour. It's Andy Burnham. Let's just let that settle for a moment. But can he change their fortunes? And if he does change their fortunes, what does it mean for you as a Reform voter, as a Tory voter, as an existing Labour voter? I mean, I'm sure we have some Labour listeners out there. Would you suddenly go back to Labour if you thought, hang on a sec, oh, no, it's looking more like the party I want it to be? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Would Donald Trump find it easier to deal with Britain if we had Prime Minister Nigel Farage?
We are not going to determine for the people of the UK who they choose as their leaders. That's the antithesis of Brexit. It's the antithesis of MAGA. But of course, I know Nigel very well. Nigel has a very close, friendly relationship to the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. I can't predict what the Brits will do, but when you have a friendly, it's like me in this position now. My friends are cabinet members.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Dan in Tunbridge, who says, Ian, you're all jumping the gun here. Starmer will never let Andy Burnham run as an MP. That's the interesting bit. We did allude to that, of course, Dan, that it will be up to the Executive Committee, as they are known. This is the Labour Party's National Executive Committee. They need to grant permission. Now, they should, in theory, be running independent of what Keir Starmer wants or doesn't want. If somebody wants to become an MP, nobody should be standing in their way because of somebody else's ambitions. But, of course, we all know in reality it doesn't really work like that. If they sniff that this is going to weaken the Labour Party, even though it might ultimately strengthen them at the other end, then they're likely just to say, nah, sorry, you can't stand down from, because it says it's got to give express permission before directly elected mayors can seek nomination as Labour candidates for elections to the Westminster Parliament. We've had it before. Boris Johnson was a mayor and an MP there was a crossover on that, and I'm tempted to say Sadiq Khan might have been in the same position. So there is precedent, but yeah, will he ever get to first base? Would he turn Labour's luck around? Would you look at Labour differently? Even if you're a reform voter, would you look at Labour differently if Andy Burnham was running the show? We've got Charlie Downs with us, campaign director from Restore Britain. Let's move on to this story, Charlie. Deeply disturbing, those plans announced by Labour to deny 4.5 million people a vote. This is not insignificant. Even two of Britain's biggest councils, Tory councils, have delayed as well. That's Suffolk and Norfolk. They were among 29 authorities to give permission to cancel May's elections. Let's have a listen to Steve Reid. He's the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, speaking in the House of Commons on this issue.
I can now confirm my decisions to the House. I have decided to bring forward legislation to postpone 29 elections. To those who say we've cancelled all the elections, we haven't. To those who say it's all Labour councils, it isn't. I've asked, I've listened, and I've acted. No messing about, no playing politics, just getting on with the job of making local government work better for local people.
Well, there it is, Charlie. No playing politics, says the Minister.
Yeah, well, this is where I think the uni party, this idea of the uni party really reveals itself, because it is the case that in a lot of the districts where a Labour-run reform is polling very well and is looking like they would win if the elections were to go ahead. But it's also the case for the Tory-run districts, like many of those in Norfolk and Suffolk, where there has also been cancellations. And it shows you, because these decisions are made at the local level to cancel the elections, what we're dealing with here is, in my view, people who are quite nakedly covering their own backsides, not wanting to lose their jobs, lose their seats, and therefore depriving 4.5 million people of the right to vote in their local council elections. And again, I mean, the reason that this is happening in the first place is because of these reforms that the government is currently bringing through to local government, which I think in and of themselves are quite concerning as well. And this is the thing that's not spoken about a great deal when we talk about this issue, because people are so focused on the elections themselves being cancelled. But actually what we're looking at here is district councils and county councils merging into these huge, like Leviathan-like unitary councils, which will themselves have elected councillors, but the total number of elected councillors that will actually be sitting will be significantly fewer than exist now. So that's in my view, that's the real withdrawal of democracy that we're dealing with here. But this sort of, step towards that is also equally concerning.
Yeah, I would agree. The logistics of doing this are sort of crazy in many respects. And when you speak, we were talking, I think it was to a Reform councillor a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that attempting to get councillors on the Isle of Sheppey, for example, making very localised decisions about what is going on in a completely different part of the county is just a nonsense. I mean, it makes no sense at all. This is hundreds of years worth of democratic process being uprooted, and for what reason? But of course, as you rightly say, the headlines are the cancellation of those votes. And I would argue, Charlie, that even if, and their argument seems to be, look, in those areas, why would we have elections on May the 7th if in a year's time we're going to have another load of elections because we're changing the system, which means some of those councillors might only be there a year? I mean, that's the worst scenario. I would counter that and say, so what? This is democracy. This was in the diary. People lent their vote to local politicians for a period of time, knowing that come May the 7th this year, they could change them if they wanted to. That's been removed, whatever way you slice it.
Yes, and just on that point there, I mean, the sort of increasing distance between elected officials and the communities that they actually govern. This, I think, is another huge concern, because I think the MO of not just this Labour government, but really our government since Blair, has been managerialism, viewing the country as basically being, composed of sort of spreadsheets and graphs and all this sort of thing that can be managed from the top down, again, distant from the communities that are actually being affected by the decisions. And I think that attitude is very much revealed in this desire to merge district and county councils. And again, as it pertains to these local elections that have been cancelled, yes, I think democracy in this country is largely a symbolic thing. And I mean that in a number of different ways.
Sure.
One, in a positive sense, in that it shows people that at least nominally they have some say over how their country is governed. But then also equally, it sort of means they don't have a say, because I think that democracy now is largely an exercise in theatre, because so many of the people who actually make the crucial decisions about how our country is governed, both at the local level and at the national level, are in fact not elected. People don't know the names of, for example, the permanent secretaries that run each department of the civil service, and these people are very difficult to remove. And I suspect the same is true at the local level as well. So yes, I mean, look, it's a huge problem that these elections have been cancelled. Again, just if for no other reason than from an optics perspective, it makes this government look illegitimate. It makes them look scared of the opposition. And as many people have said, this is kind of the behaviour of a tin pot third world dictatorship to cancel elections like this. Does it actually mean anything? Would it actually matter in the grand scheme of things? I'm less sure about that, because as I say, I think democracy in this country now is largely fake.
Indeed, and it's interesting that the Electoral Commission, their chief executive, reiterated it. He said, reorganisation is not a legitimate reason to delay voting. And if they're saying it, I think you can take a certain amount of weight to a comment from their chief executive. Let's move to this one, final one. President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, showed off a Gaza master plan. Of course, there's lots of talk about what happens to Gaza, that apparently includes coastal tourism, corridors with high rises. As he revealed, work is already underway to rebuild the war-torn area. Let's have a look and a listen at what he said.
And then New Gaza. It could be a hope, it could be a destination, have a lot of industry, and really be a place that the people there can thrive, have great employment. Once this starts going, we think there should be 100% full employment and opportunity for everybody there. And we have a lot of data on what can be, but we think that this really gives the Gazan people an opportunity to live their aspirations. But it all starts with security.
Wow. That's like saying to AI, please show me a photo of something that looks absolutely nothing like anything I've ever seen in my life, because that's where I'm going to live. And then that pops up. That's what he's saying. I'm not sure what Mr. Kushner's credentials are. Maybe he's a very clever, well-educated chap. But I guess his biggest CV, written in bold, is that he's the son-in-law of the current president. What do we make of this, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Ian. I mean, I find this whole thing really ghoulish, to be honest, like really dark, because it's one of these issues where, look, you have to be prepared to give your enemies their due when they're correct about something. And the issue of Gaza and the ongoing, in my view, atrocities that are taking place there at the hands of the IDF, the left are basically correct about this, in my view. They have taken ownership of that issue. And of course, you see them wearing their kaffirs, screaming free Palestine and all the rest of it. And many people will look at that and think, oh, it's the left going on again, like they did about trans, like they did about BLM and all this sort of thing, all of these pet issues that those people, university students and others, have kind of made hay from over the last decade or so. But on this issue, I mean, look, it does seem to be the case that Israel are committing some pretty atrocious crimes in that region, and that we appear to be arming them. And the United States also is giving them huge amounts of money to do that. And then you look at this, where somewhere like Gaza City or Rafah has been literally leveled to the ground. It's just rubble. There's no houses there anymore. Nobody can live there anymore. And they've killed tens of thousands of people, disabled hundreds of thousands of people, killed women, killed children. And, you can say, sure, this is what happens in a war. That is true. But in this particular war, it seems to be the case that the proportionality has been wildly, it's so out of proportion as against the cause of the war initially, in my view, to kill as many children and women as they have. And then to go to the World Economic Forum, Davos, the very core of the regime, of the establishment, and to present these kind of high-shine images of Dubai-style skyscrapers, saying that's what we're going to build on the graves, on the bodies of all of these people that have just died. I think it's absolutely abominable.
Yeah, it's pretty dark and uncomfortable stuff, whatever. I mean, to be showing, sort of real estate brochures, essentially, as people are probably still laying under that rubble. No matter what side of this you're on, is not the point. It just feels all shades of wrong. Charlie, we hit the clock. Thank you as ever. Have a cracking weekend, Charlie Downs. He is the campaign director for Restore Britain. Thank you to him. Over to you. There's a load of stuff to get your teeth into there as well. Comments on that. Also, if you're in the Crowborough area, comments on how day one has gone in terms of the barracks, the new asylum barracks. What are you seeing? What are you sensing is the feeling in that neck of the woods? And, of course, the question on Andy Burnham. Now, this is interesting regardless of where you sit on the political map. In fact, it's probably more interesting if you're not a Labour supporter, if you're Reform or Tories, even Greens or Lib Dem. The significance of Andy Burnham potentially getting to first base, that in itself is a mountain to climb, but in theory, he could do it. Will it change Labour's luck? Does it make Labour more threatening to your party if Andy Burnham is our Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots of comment coming through on Andy Burnham as well. JB says, vote for Burnham if he leads Labour. An emphatic no. A career politician through trade unions and as a researcher. All knout jobs. No, thank you. Cheers, says JB in Aberdeenshire. Although, that journey through trade unions is a fairly standard journey for Labour politicians, not unusual. Let's speak to a man in that very position. Writer, well, he's not an MP. Writer, trade unionist and author of Despise Why the Modern Left Loathes the Working Classes. Paul Embry is with us. Afternoon to you, Paul. I mean, Burnham's backstory is a good one. It's very Labour in lots of respects. He seems to be a relatable figure. Many would say more so than our current Prime Minister. He does have a mountain to climb, of course, because of the apparatus that he has to run through as set down by the Labour Party rules. But would he change the luck of the party?
Well, good afternoon, Ian. I certainly think he would be a better leader than Keir Starmer. I think he would be seen by the general population as less wooden, which he is, less technocratic, which he is. I've always felt that the kind of test for Labour leaders in many respects, in fact, any political leader who wants to win the working class vote is, can you go into a working men's club in a place like Mansfield and not look out of place? Can you speak to people on their level? Can you engage with people on their level? Can you connect with people on their level in places like that? I think Burnham can. I don't think Starmer can, and for that reason, I think that he will be more appealing to the general electorate.
But of course, he's, as I said at the beginning, Paul, he's got to get through some pretty tricky hoops. And that National Executive Committee, powerful stuff, they could say, sorry, nothing to do with the fact we don't like you or don't think you'd be a Prime Minister, although behind the scenes maybe it is that. But they could say, actually, logistically, we're not going to give this the green light. It means we have an expensive process with mayoral elections and all sorts of other ramifications. So it's a no from me, could be their answer. What do you think instinctively, Paul, they are likely to conclude?
Well, it's a really interesting dilemma for the NEC, the National Executive Committee, because, of course, Starmer enjoys control on the National Executive Committee. But, and undoubtedly, there will be Starmer allies who will be thinking, we want to block this guy from getting on the long list for the constituency of Gorton and Denton. Yeah. I think the problem is, if they were seen to do that, it would provoke the mother of all backlashes within the party. And actually, it would look as if Starmer was running scared of someone who was a credible opponent. That said, I think the interesting thing about the Labour Party is it doesn't usually do regicide. I mean, the Tories have no qualms about deposing their leaders if they don't think...
There's a national sport over there for the Tories.
Well, indeed, and they seem to enjoy it. They seem to go through it every couple of years or so. But with the Labour Party, they really don't have a history of that sort of thing. And in fact, the last time it was tried was against Jeremy Corbyn, and the candidate who challenged him was Owen Smith. And I suspect very few people now remember Owen Smith. So there's no guarantee that he's going to get on the shortlist and become the candidate for Gorton and Denton. B, there's no guarantee that even if he was the candidate, that he would win. I mean, it's going to be a big battle in that constituency, and Reform have certainly got designs on winning it. There's talk about Zach Polanski, who's a Manchester lad, could stand on behalf of the Green Party. Yeah. And even if he got through all of that and he got the 20% of Labour MPs necessary in order to mount a challenge to Keir Starmer, I think he probably would win it at that point, but there's no guarantee of it. What's interesting about,
I was just looking at the last election results in Andrew Gwynn's constituency, Paul, as you say, Gorton and Denton. It was a convincing win for in 2024 for Mr. Gwynn. He'd had previously better results, but it was over 50% he got. Reform came second, interestingly. I mean, it was a distant second, but they came second. And the Tories came fifth behind the Workers' Party.
Yeah, and actually, when you look at the data, Ian, from the last election, it's really interesting because Reform came second in around 90-odd constituencies, 80 plus of which were Labour and 60 of which were in the north of England. So in that last election, the Reform Party really parked their tanks well and truly on Labour's lawn. So it is absolutely not beyond the realms of possibility that even with Burnham as the candidate for Labour in that constituency, that reform could win it. So anyone who's complacent enough to think that Burnham would be a shoo-in to get back to Parliament, I think needs to think again.
Indeed. Paul, great to have you with us. Thanks for your time as ever. Always a great voice. Paul Embry is a writer, trade unionist and firefighter and an author. A lot on your CV. Great to have Paul with us. Let's speak to Kevin Marr, former Labour advisor. Afternoon to you, Kevin.
How you doing, Ian?
Oh, good. Nice to have you with us as well. Now, Mr. Burnham, he's the man of the moment, of course. I'm sure you probably know Andy at some level. He's well respected within the Labour Party, probably giving a few wobbles in Downing Street at the moment. But look, it's a democracy. He used to be the mayor. Some people say he succeeded. Others have questions. But nonetheless, if he wants to become an MP, why shouldn't he?
I mean, quite. I mean, Andy Burnham is, when you look at polling of political figures, not just in the Labour Party, but across British politics, Andy Burnham is usually the only person that's got a net favourable, positive rating. Everybody else is a kind of in the deep freeze. And that's because Andy Burnham is a nice bloke as much as anything else. Yes, I do know him, but I know lots of people have come across him in Greater Manchester over the last 8 years with him being mayor, and everybody says the same thing about Andy Burnham. He's a really nice bloke. What you see is what you get. He's got a very nice style, and he's done a very good job as mayor of Greater Manchester. I mean, he took this on when the idea of elected mayors was a bit of a kind of, it might work, it might not work, and he's knuckled down. He's done really, really well in terms of economic growth, in terms of building a very successful economy in Greater Manchester, tackling a lot of good social issues, developing new qualifications for post-16 skills, and of course we've got buses all over the place in Greater Manchester, which he's managed to fix this very thorny issue outside of London of the bus service, and it's one of those very ordinary day-to-day kind of things that lots of politicians don't want to build a political career around. But Andy's done that, and he's got a good record of achievement, and he's developing something, the concept of sort of Manchesterism and some of the things he's done there that he wants to try and scale up. So I think he's at a point in his political journey, in his career, where he's saying, look, I've done the Westminster thing. I was a minister. I was a cabinet minister in 3 departments in the last Labour government. I've then had a big slug of executive power and experience as mayor of Greater Manchester, which I can now bring back in to Westminster again. So that's, in a sense, that's the positives for him. People around Keir Starmer will see his potential candidacy, I'm sure, as a threat and as a risk and as a potential challenge. But the reality of it is that Labour and where it's heading right here, right now, Labour's numbers are so low in the polls that they reside at the bottom of the Mariana Trench at the moment, and that's not going to change radically between the local elections in May.
Indeed,
it's very likely. Sorry, Ian.
No, I was about to say 15 weeks away. That's all it is, the local elections. Round the corner.
It's very unlikely that the fundamentals of what we're seeing in the polls and the actual election results in the by-elections that we're seeing, where the Labour share of the vote is being trashed pretty much everywhere. Now, the reality of it is, the political physics of it is that Labour's probably going to have a very bad day on the 7th of May in local elections across England, and then, of course, the Scottish and Welsh elections as well. And it's at that point where, the MPs behind Keir Starmer are going to get very, very nervous, and it's likely that there will be some sort of challenge to the Prime Minister's authority and his position. That's just political physics. And Andy Burnham represents, I think, for Labour, a really good option. Now, not to say that if he gets selected as a candidate for this by-election, wins the by-election, he then becomes Prime Minister. There's lots of ifs and buts along the way, and it might not happen. But he is a very credible contender with a genuinely different message and a different style, which I think would do an awful lot to resurrect the Labour brand.
And of course, just a final point on this, the NEC, there is the big sticking point, of course, for Mr Burnham. And as Paul Embry, our previous guest, said, Mr Starmer has a lot of influence here, but of course he can't be seen to tell the NEC what they should do. This could be difficult, couldn't it? Because the NEC may well just very simply argue that, look, we can decide that you can stand, but it puts us in an interesting position, because then we've then got to look at a very expensive mayoral situation, the seat you would vacate in order for this to happen. If you don't win it, you can't go back to it, and there's all sorts of logistics behind it. But ultimately, will it come down to whether Keir Starmer gives it that sort of Caesar-like thumbs up or down?
I think there will be lots of people around him that will see Andy Burnham as on manoeuvres and as a potential challenger and all the rest of it. But as I say, it may well happen anyway, whether Andy Burnham's in Parliament or not. The morning after the May election results, if they're as bad as they appear to be on all the polling evidence, then Keir Starmer's going to have a very bad weekend at that point anyway, and it won't really matter whether Andy Burnham's there or is not. Somebody else will possibly challenge the Prime Minister at that point. There's an instinct for loyalty, and then Paul Embry made a very good point a minute ago that Labour is very bad knifing its leaders. It doesn't do this very, very effectively, and it does it quite reluctantly. And it may be that Keir Starmer carries on, but he's got a very, very hard road ahead anyway. Anybody who's British Prime Minister has, because there's so much going wrong in the world and
indeed
domestically as well. But Keir, as I say, Keir Starmer's numbers are as bad as any Prime Ministers have ever been, and it looks very difficult to see any route back to kind of national popularity for him. So at some stage, the party's attention is going to turn and say a different leader might give us a better chance.
Bring back Neil Kinnock. What about that? There you go, Kevin. Sorted. Job done. I don't think he'd want that for love nor money.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, indeed. I was thinking Sheffield for a moment. I don't know why my mind went there. I'm sure yours did as well. Kevin, great to have you with us. Lovely to speak. Kevin Marr, former Labour advisor. We are talking of, I don't want to say the man of the moment, but it's quite a pivotal moment. Andy Burnham, of course. Could he become the next Prime Minister? Would he change Labour's luck? Many say he's been a great mayor of Greater Manchester. Others are not so kind. Let's have a reminder on the big day when he got the big job.
This is the dawn of a new era, not just for this city region, but for politics in our country. It has been too London-centric for too long. The old political and party structures haven't delivered for all people and for all places. They have created this crisis in politics, which we are living through now. And you know what? We could hold as many general elections as we like, and that will never solve the problem.
Could he become the next leader of the Labour Party and therefore the Prime Minister? Let's speak with Liv Auerhand, local government commentator who lives in Manchester, interestingly. Liv, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I've always said local government. The stories are, you know how Private Eye does that Rotten Boroughs column, where they look at what goes on in local authorities. I've long thought, when I used to be in the press gallery at Westminster, that actually some of the most interesting stories are actually in local government. There's some real, if you're into politics, if you're into how budgets and money is spent and local democracy, then there's some cracking stories in these areas. And I guess this is one that is both local and now national, of course, because here we have a mayor of a significant region, Greater Manchester, apparently considering, although he hasn't said this himself, jumping into MP status again. Theory being, well, not theory, fact being, he wants to become the Prime Minister. I mean, it's great for people like us because we can chat away about this. What's the chances, do you think, of this being a straight road for Andy Burnham to number 10?
I mean, you and your last speaker were talking about this, right? There's an NEC body in the Labour Party that's stacked with Starmer loyalists who were going to do their best to block, I think, a challenge to Starmer at this stage. But like you were talking about, Starmer's ratings are incredibly low, and Burnham is a popular figure. He's a popular figure in the Labour Party and nationally, and that's for good reason in a lot of ways. He's really stood up for the North West and particularly for Greater Manchester in his time as mayor. And a lot of that standing up has been about having local democracy, taking away power from Westminster, and talking about how ordinary people should be at the heart of decision-making about their lives. What I'm worried about, though, as someone who lives locally, is what does he leave behind him? Where's the legacy? I want to see ordinary people in Greater Manchester put at the centre by whoever follows him, but I'm worried that there will be a hole there, not a legacy, depending on what happens. And whilst the rest of the country gets excited about the national perspective on this, I'm going to be thinking, OK, yeah, and the Greater Manchester people? What about us?
Yeah.
Who's thinking about us now?
Well, that would arguably be the NEC's kind of thinking, certainly publicly, wouldn't it? That, well, it leaves a big hole. It's very expensive to kind of, get another situation going. Andy Burnham's first election, 2017, Greater Manchester, I mean, he absolutely mullered his nearest opponent, the Tories. I think almost tripling the vote that his opponent got. It was an incredible moment for Burnham. But as you say, it leaves a big gap there. The NEC may well just say, sorry, in the wider picture, take the personalities out of it. It's going to be logistically a headache. It's going to be expensive. It won't be a good look for Labour. That's likely to be what's written on that press release when we finally find out what they think. Should Mr. Burnham go there?
Yeah, I think it's very plausible. And honestly, if I'm completely straight with you, I think a lot of us are tired of the careers of Westminster politicians, or politicians like Burnham, who say they're not Westminster politicians until they get the opportunity dangled again. We're tired of their career ambitions dictating our prospects.
Yeah.
We want people from the local area making decisions about us, rather than these sort of stories getting to dominate the headlines, whilst the local infrastructure, the local budgets that you were talking about, get determined by people whose agendas end up being about their careers. And I guess it's because of that there's the campaign I'm involved in for a Greater Manchester Citizens Assembly that's permanent and powerful and brings together people on the local level like a jury to make decisions.
Sure.
Is why we want reforms like that, because these political machinations end up underserving local regions and the whole country at the end of the day.
Yeah, I sense you're absolutely bang on about that. I've long felt that sort of centre points of politics, i.e. Westminster and the like, and big bureaucracies that follow all the major parties around are often the hurdle to democracy in a curious way, because they stop local voices and local organisations being able to do more in their own turf and on their own ground. And I was looking at that particular constituency that, you know, we are told Mr Burnham might be considering Gorton and Denton. It's fairly interesting there, isn't it? Because, yes, Mr Gwynne previously won it quite convincingly, but Reform was second. Lib Dems third, I think it was. The Workers' Party were fourth, and the Tories fifth. I mean, if you ever wanted, I mean, this is exciting for people like me, because like, wow, this is. I mean, it's also democracy in action, right? I mean, you know, things change around. It's no guarantee, and the reason I raise that if Andy Burnham did stand, that he would win.
No, it's really not. I was talking to someone who lives locally. It's also my old local area. I moved a little away from there a couple of years ago, but I know it quite well. And I was talking to someone else who lives there locally and campaigns there just this morning about this very question. One, who are they going to back? They don't know yet. But two, who are the local people going to back? As they've changed the constituency boundaries, the vote share, like you just described, has massively changed. And Andy's very popular on the regional and the city region level. And he's popular on the local level as well, but we don't know whether that's going to play out when he's on a Labour Party ticket more than a mayoral ticket. And what we know is that even when Burnham's popular, the infrastructure that he's been involved in isn't. And so what that looks like on the doorstep on that local level is really, really hard to guess. And I think really ultimately people need decision-making bodies at the local level that aren't so in hock to these sort of dog races between these parties that ultimately are full of people whose careers are oriented around politics. They need more ordinary people at the heart of decision-making, because otherwise you get these absolute wild dog races in these local areas that aren't serving the local population.
Yeah, and again, we often lose sight of that. It's about local population and local representation. Liv, thank you for your time. Really interesting to chat. Liv Hourhand, who's a local government commentator who lives in Manchester, so she's aware of Burnham's impact there. Is he a man that's likely to change the fortunes of the Labour Party if he did get the big job? If you're a Reform voter, if you're a Tory voter, would you fear Andy Burnham on the basis that he'll be a more successful Prime Minister than Keir Starmer, could change their luck, could win the next election in 2029? Lines open. This is Talk.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David in Essex says it's not person or party but policies. If these stay the same, then there is no chance whether Burnham's there or not. Yeah, and it should be. That should be the case. It should be about policies. But, of course, it kind of isn't really anymore, is it? It's the person who is now imparting the message, the trust you have, their ability to impart and engage and feel like someone who can communicate with ordinary people. They've become really central parts of the gig. Starmer has none of it, which is extraordinary when you think of, this was the party that said, no, this is the man that's going to be great. Turns out he was anything but. Stephen is in Glasgow on Andy Burnham. Afternoon to you, Stephen. Can he change Labour's luck?
Aye. Good on Ian. I'll tell you what, he won't. You know why?
Go on.
Because he's a like for like. If you were a football striker, you had an injury, you take off that striker, you're going to put on another striker.
Yeah.
So that's what it's like. And it's, I'll keep on the football theme here. If you bounce a ball in the ground, eventually the ball will go down and down.
So you think it's just like it'll be the same thing, just a different voice?
It's the same thing.
In fact, it could even, to be honest, Stephen, it could be kind of worse in many ways because it's widely seen that Andy Burnham would take Labour more to the left.
They've still got all the left wing backbenchers, pal.
Yeah.
And they've still got that. It's not going to change them. Stanley's a disaster. I've never voted Labour. I voted Conservative all my life until the last election.
Yeah.
I've voted Reform, and I will do in the future.
Big elections happening in May in Scotland, Stephen. Is that an SNP vote for you coming round the corner?
No chance. But Ian, you can't stop the vote in the elections up here, and you can't stop the elections in Wales.
Yeah.
They're stopping them in England, and that's a bit. My brother stays in just outside Newcastle, a wee place called Prudhoe, and he's always been a Conservative all his life.
Yeah.
But now I've sort of convinced him to vote Reform.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to knock it out of them, don't you?
Yeah. And another thing about the Northern Ireland thing, I served twice in Northern Ireland in the army. Right, and then I'm disgusted with what Labour are doing.
Yes, with their latest shenanigans around officers that served in Northern Ireland. Get it. Listen, Stephen, thank you, mate, for that. We hit the clock. Really appreciate your call, though. Starting us off, Stephen in Glasgow. Here's a voice note on Andy Burnham. Comes from Vinny.
Wouldn't it be great if Burnham stood for an MP and lost? Oh, my life. Great show again.
Well, you see, that is completely possible. As Paul Embry, our previous guest, was saying, in the last election, Reform came second in something like 90 seats, of which most were northern seats. They came second in this up-and-coming by-election. They're going to really fight this one, regardless of who stands for Labour. Lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. Loads to get through. I love this story of the Andy Burnham thing, the ramifications and the implications and the debates for other... That's why it's interesting, because it's what it says about other parties and whether there is a fear or whether there is a bring-it-on nature of this. Keir Starmer's allies, of course, are planning to block Andy Burnham from running for Parliament in a Manchester by-election. This is after Andrew Gwynn, the Labour MP for Gorton and Denton, said yesterday that he would stand down from his position. This would give, technically, Burnham the possibility of standing and the chance, therefore, to overthrow Keir Starmer as leader and, therefore, become Prime Minister. They might need a new face after the 7th of May. Is Andy Burnham the man to do it? Is Andy Burnham the man to change Labour's luck? Do you feel threatened as a Reform voter or a Tory voter if Andy Burnham was back in town? Also this afternoon, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has showed off a kind of estate agent-like Gaza master plan that includes coastal tourism corridors with high-rises, as he revealed work is already underway to rebuild the war-torn area. I mean, it was really quite something. I think we had all agreed, no matter what side of this particular war and dispute you stand on, it was pretty distasteful stuff, frankly, but he's up and running with it. And hundreds of illegal dumps are operating across England, including at least 11 so-called super sites that contain, I mean, this is so grim, contain tens of thousands of tons of rubbish. Disgusting, fly-tipping creatures. That's what they are. Animals over there. Who the hell does it? Who turns up and goes, this is a good idea. I'll tell you what, I'll just put the old mattress here. Beryl, where should we put a mattress down there? What, down the... It's an embankment. It's a kid's playing field. It's somebody's garages. We don't care, just dump that urine-stained toot all over the place. And that's where we're at, and there are loads of them, and they are growing. Is that the case in your neck of the woods? Are you overridden by the fly-tipping menaces of Great Britain? Lines are open on all of those subjects. Ways to get in touch. You can voice note or you can call 0344 499 1000, or you can message 87222. John down in London says Andy Burnham has been put in the picture just so Labour have something else to offer when they get hammered in the May elections. They are grasping at straws. The problem is it would be the wrong way round, wouldn't it? I mean, when would there be a by-election? That's a good question. Do we have any information on this? You'd have to have at least, 8 weeks or so. If they announced it now, the by-election will be on this date. Forgive me if I'm behind on this. So that would be before the May election. I think the smart money is they would have it on the date of the May elections. They often chime it. I could be 100% wrong on that. That would be my thinking. If they haven't, or if they've already announced this and I've missed it, sincere apologies. We're normally over this kind of stuff. But that would be my guess. They would do it then. But you'd need a new face in place if that person was going to become, or challenged to become, the next leader of the Labour Party and therefore the Prime Minister. There's an awful lot to this. Will it ever? He may not get to first base, of course. We've got all of that going on. I mentioned the May elections. There'll be 4.5 million of you that won't be voting in the May elections. We hear now that 2 of Britain's biggest councils have also added their names to the list of allowing that delay. They are Tory-controlled Suffolk and Norfolk. They join 27 other authorities that have been given permission to cancel May's ballot. Let's have a reminder of what Steve Reid said. He's the Secretary of State for Housing. This is him speaking yesterday in Parliament.
I can now confirm my decisions to the House. I have decided to bring forward legislation to postpone 29 elections. To those who say we've cancelled all the elections, we haven't. To those who say it's all Labour councils, it isn't. I've asked, I've listened, and I've acted. No messing about, no playing politics, just getting on with the job of making local government work better for local people.
Well, it should be said the Electoral Commission Chief Executive completely disagrees with him. He said reorganisation is not a legitimate reason to delay voting. Let's get a word from Mike Indian, political commentator. Mike, afternoon to you. I mean, whatever way you slice it, whether you're Labour or something, it's mostly Labour local authorities, but there's Tories in there as well, some independents and Lib Dems too. You can understand why at least some of those 4.5 million people might have the hump right now.
It is completely understandable, and I think a very dangerous move by the Labour government. It allows their opponents to paint them as authoritarian and democratic. Little mind that local elections attract only about 20% turnout. I think the Electoral Commission's entirely right here. There is no legitimate reason to postpone these polls, and hopefully this will spur people on to actually want to vote for their local councillors too, because they make huge difference. And we saw a remarkable scene in my hometown, Nuneaton, the other night, where the leader of the Labour-run council was actually replaced overnight because of the decision they took to seek deferment of the election due to reorganisation as well.
And there is a very strong argument, and a very simple one, Mike, that, look, we don't care what the reasons are, you don't cancel elections. Simple as that.
No, I mean, look, things during the pandemic were perhaps a little different. Even then it was
of course,
controversial. People couldn't go and vote, electronically. But, this is something about which, combined with the narratives around jury trials, digital ID, which they've rolled back on, this paints that a Labour government in a very authoritarian light. And I think they're mistaking authoritarian for strength. And look, no one's going to lie that local government can be increasingly confusing, bureaucratic sometimes, but it's also been underfunded and under-examined for a while as well. And we see many councils now pushing for high increases in council tax, close to the 5% limit, irrespective of the political shade of them, to try and plug huge gaps. We see councils like Birmingham struggling with bin strikes as well. This is not the time to put off people going to the ballot box, even if the council will only be there for a year or so. It's still taking decisions well beyond its actual mandate.
Indeed. It doesn't feed into a great look for the... And then you throw in... it's interesting, wasn't it, that Lisa Nandy at the weekend was suggesting Reform are probably a bit of a fascist party, and Reform not unreasonably shot back, well, we're not cancelling any elections or cancelling jury trials, which is a fairly persuasive argument in the context.
I mean, but there are Reform councils, though, that have had to raise council tax above their manifesto pledges as well.
Yeah, true.
But yes, it is an entirely different thing to say that people aren't going to be able to have their say in the local elections on May. And I think to the listeners that feel passionately about this, make sure you write to your councils, engage, lobby to get your voice heard in this regard too. Local government is important. It's not glamorous, but it's the bin collection, potholes. These things are our communities. And you alluded there to the super tips that were occurring before as well. We want to ensure that councils are well run, but also accountable to the people that vote them in.
I mentioned Reform there. Worth a word, if you would, Mike, on this latest news that many pollsters are warning that Reform UK faces an electoral ceiling, as some voters are not that enamoured with the party. Lord Hayward argues this perception caps growth, mirroring limitations seen for similar parties across Europe. So Reform are making the headlines. They are doing well in the polls, but they've, if you like, they've hit a ceiling of popularity, and there's only one way that goes. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we are still 3 years away from the general election, and that's the great hope of the establishment parties, I think, including the Labour government when it comes to Reform. But we have seen the fact that Reform's polling figures have tended to peak in the low 30s. Now, that could be enough, as you said before, 90 seats where they finished second in the last election. But crucially, these polling results don't often translate to similar vote shares at the general election. Labour had huge polling leads going into the 2024 election, sometimes polling up to 40%. In fact, they ended up polling nearer to 30%. People often don't vote or change their minds nearer the time. And of course, we saw this with Nigel Farage and the defections he's been dealing with as well. He doesn't just want Reform to become the Conservative Party 2.0, but that also means closer to the time, trying to find where Reform's key bases are. And this is what the Lib Dems were so good at doing at the last election. The reason they got 70 seats to Reform's 5 or 6 is that they were able to target their vote and get it out, which is what you need to do to maximise success. But I still expect a good showing for Reform up ahead. I think they're strong contenders in the Gorton by-election. I think a strong showing in the local election results. And all that does tend to feed on itself too. But don't forget, as with the Lib Dems in 2010, the SDP in 1983, and Labour in 2024, poll leads don't always translate into results and seats under the British system.
And a word finally, Mike, on Andy Burnham. Of course, there's lots of mood music around this at the moment. Nothing from the Mayor of Greater Manchester himself, but everybody else is talking on his behalf, it seems. And, you know, could he stand? Will he stand? Will he even be allowed to stand? What is your political radar telling you on this one? Is he likely to go for it?
Andy Burnham will surely see this as his best opportunity to come back into Parliament. This is not mere Westminster tittle-tattle here. He made it very clear at last year's conference in Liverpool that many MPs have been urging him to stand. He's run for the Labour leadership at least twice before, and both times failed to get it. I am very sceptical about whether or not you want to give up the real tangible power of a mayor to become a backbencher under this Labour government as well. And also, it would be a huge waste of time and money. He still has time to serve on his mandate. It's almost like a parallel between David Cameron and Boris Johnson, when Boris was running as London mayor, but also wanted to be back in the cabinet and the House of Commons. Andy Burnham should focus on getting on with the job and running the biggest city in the north, and actually showing, you know, what Labour government and local regional government can actually do. I think, you know, that there will be plenty of opportunities for people to try and get rid of Keir Starmer if they're unhappy with him after these elections. But I don't detect an appetite among Labour MPs I've spoken to this week, Ian, to change the leader. They want to try and wait and see how things are going. So at the moment, all this feels a little bit over-egged to me.
We'll see. Mike, thank you as ever. Good to see you again. Mike, Indian political commentator on those big stories. I would find it fascinating, just on the last point that Mike just mentioned there, that Labour MPs are going, no, we must hold on to Keir. I mean, if ever you wanted to know what idiocy looked like, it's right there, isn't it, in that let's hold on to a losing man. And you have to remember, back in 2024, you got a landslide, share of the vote was hopeless. I know these things happen, but, you know, when Jeremy Corbyn did better than you, that gives you food for thought. The choice we had around at the time wasn't great. The Tories were in the bin at this stage. Wouldn't have mattered if they promised everybody a free £500,000, a golden retriever and a Ford Cortina. That people still wouldn't have voted for them. Reform are really yet to show the fullness of what they believe they can do. So Keir Starmer gets in, and it's been a disaster. Come on, Labour people tell you it's been a disaster. Lots of reasons. I get it. You know, events and all that. Dear boy, events, as they always seem to say, is a problem. But Keir Starmer himself is the bigger problem. And if I was a Labour MP, I'd want that fella out the door by noon. I'd want him gone as soon as is physically possible. I want a fighting chance in 2029. By May the 7th, he'll be just shy of 2 years into the job. So it's sort of halfway through for Starmer at that stage. It would be the most appropriate time to switch your leader, particularly since they're going to get a royal kicking on May the 7th in the local elections. Let's go to Ian down in London on this story. Ian, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Hold on. Right.
Holding.
Right, OK. Basically, the whole thing with Starmer with Andy Burnham is quite simple. Would Burnham really want to cut his own political throat by, first of all, going up in the election and then suddenly not getting elected, if it came to that?
Yeah.
Also, if he did come in and then he's got 2 years, let's say, to sort of really change it around, he won't, because there's still going to be infighting in the Labour Party. That's not going to go away. But the biggest issue for this country is, quite simply, it's what the right side does. And I don't mean right like for me or whatever, the right, like the Conservatives and the Reform.
Yeah.
Because if they don't sort their house out and do something to get together or whatever, then Labour will get in, not just because of what their seats, because they will definitely be down on what they've got this time, but there'll be Corbyn's mob, there'll be the Lib Dems, and there'll be the other, the Green Party. They'll all group together and we'll be under the same sort of rubbish that we're under now, if not worse.
Would it? Do you think he would win the by-election, firstly, Ian?
I don't know.
It's not a shoo-in, but
no.
He's fighting the last guy got I think it was just over 50% of the vote in 2024. This is Andrew Gwynn. Reform came second with about 5,000 votes. So it's about 16,000 votes to 5,000. So it was a significant win, but lots have happened in the last couple of years. So Reform are really going to battle for this one. I mean, Reform are going to go for it anyway. So it's not a dead cert Burnham would win the seat.
No, because I don't know with that what the vote for the Reform was. What was the vote for the Conservative Party? And also, how many of the Labour ones are absolutely disillusioned and think we're going to, what? They're suddenly going to say, oh, yeah, we want Andy Burnham. But there's no thing that even if they voted him in, is he going to get elected to be the party leader?
Well, indeed. I mean, the Tories came fifth in that particular seat, believe it or not.
Well, that means that quite simply it was never, ever going to be a right sort of wing sort of seat. If
you wouldn't think so, but then the fact that Reform came second is still quite telling, even if you had horrendous results for those that came third and fourth, who got around 4,000. I've got it here now. Green Party, so Andrew Gwynn got 18,500 votes, slightly more than I just suggested. Reform candidate, a guy called Lee Moffat, got 5,142. The Green Party it was that came third with 4,000. So the Greens not far below Reform. Tories, the Workers' Party, what the hell? They got 3,766. And then the Conservatives got 2,888. And John Reid, a Liberal Democrat, got 1,399. So it's completely up in the air, right?
It is, but it's also this same factor that if you've got the other Socialist Party, the Workers' Party, that means that if he's going to put up a candidate, Sultana and Corbyn in that area, that would change to being their party, because they're most probably that sort of way leaning. Also, the ones that are Labour might say, I just don't want to go out to vote there. They might not even vote whatever, because they just don't, they might not want Reform in, but they don't want Labour to sort of, they're not that sort of keen on what Labour are doing. It is, I think it goes past that. What happens, it doesn't matter. If Burnham got in because he's such a superstar and everything else, great. But whatever happens, it's after the event when it comes to the general election, what has gone on the right wing as opposed to the Labour. Labour, if they carry on as it is, it doesn't matter who's in charge, they're just not going to get anywhere, right? Unless, especially if Badenoch and Farage get together and sort something out. If they get something sorted out, they will wipe the floor with them.
They will. I think you're right on that. But, of course, the danger on the left is if how many of the left could get something sorted out on that point, because you may well have a situation where Andy Burnham, if he was the leader, he would somehow neutralise the threat from the Green Party. Many of those would go, oh, Andy's a bit more left. So that might give them a little more. And then, of course, Labour could unite with the Lib Dems. So it's all to play for.
You just missed one thing out.
Go on.
Even if Andy Burnham got in, has he got any business experience? So that's what's lacking on the Labour front bench. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, because there is no business experience. But I think those guys, the more I think about it when I look at the current front bench, Ian, is I think they're quite proud of not having any business experience. I think they wear it as a badge of honour.
Yeah, but the country are sick of it.
Oh, of course they are.
They're the ones that are looking at it and saying, yeah, all right, so you've got a new sort of modern superstar, as opposed to maybe that somebody can actually talk, as opposed to somebody who's just like a tool. But basically, it doesn't matter. They want somebody that's got action in them, and he hasn't got it.
Yep.
Labour still, if you take to Manchester, there's nothing really sort of gone on special. It's still got to have business experience, and that is what he hasn't got.
Indeed. On that point, great call, Ian. Nice to speak. Ian in London, thank you for that. If this is your constituency, what are you making? I don't know much about Gordon other than John Thor, Inspector Morse. I think was born in that neck of the woods. The Workers' Party got 3,700, that was Galloway's old party, of course, 3,766 votes. Were you one of the people that voted for the Workers' Party? Reform came second. I mean, it was a distant second from the current MP, Andrew Gwynn, but it does rather show that this could be thrown up in the air. Like most constituencies, if you add up the people that voted for all the other parties, it's almost as many, not quite actually, as the person that won it. So it's divided over there. Reform arguably would do so much better this time around than in 2024. Would they do enough to beat Andy? I think Andy Burnham would do really well in that seat. If they're going to put a Labour candidate in that might win it, I think Burnham probably would just edge it. But I think it'll be close, really close with Reform. But once he's got it, if he gets it, I think he's home and dry. I genuinely think he's home and dry. It's a mountain to climb because you've got the NEC that will stand in the way of whether he is able to even stand. 0344 499 1000.
Hello and welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits, and that's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of its desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 24 minutes after 2 o'clock. Quinn in Rotherhithe says, doesn't matter who the leader of the Labour dictatorship is, they will never get in again. We, the British people, will never forgive, says Quinn. Tony says, it shows how desperate Labour are that they can't even replace him with someone already there. There is that. Paul makes this point, what makes you so sure there'll be a general election in 2029? Yeah, they might cancel it. And on reform support peaking, I wouldn't read too much into that story, but Amanda similarly says, beware of the silent majority. It's a cracking point. Back to your calls. This will be Matthew in Warrington. Not too far from your neck of the woods, Matthew. What are you making of the Burnham, I suppose the Burnham, from not quite from the ashes, but certainly as an MP, the Burnham return? Is it possible?
Me and my mate, after your show yesterday, me and my mate Tony, we had a discussion about Labour.
Yeah.
And we said, since Labour have been in power in the last 16 months, can we name one thing that they've actually done that has helped the British person, the voter?
Yeah.
And all I got was tumbleweed. And we had a bit of a laugh and a joke over breakfast clubs. There has been nothing that Keir Starmer and that's Labour Party has brought to the table to help us out. So he's going to go. He's definitely going to go because he can see it in his eyes. He's got 1,000 metre stare, hasn't he? He's like he's been
Yeah, he has. It's like he's got some kind of... It's like someone's had him in a kind of cellar for about 6 years and he's just been discovered and they've washed him down, put a suit on him, but he's still got that kind of slight Stockholm Syndrome smile.
Fritzl has caught him.
Well, yeah.
Well, but anyway...
I know what you're saying.
Burnham's going to come in if he gets in. So what's he going to do that Starmer's going to do different? Because they're not going to stop the immigration. They're not going to stop the boats. They're going to keep taxing us.
Yep.
They're going to keep giving pay rises to all the service workers. So what's Burnham going to do so different that'll save the Labour Party?
I'll tell you.
Next election.
I'll tell you, Matthew.
There's nothing.
He's a Scouser.
Yeah, well, but even Scousers are not voting for Labour anymore.
No, I know, but when I say he's a Scouser, he's a working class guy from Liverpool, far more relatable than Keir Starmer. So he's got to be, in that respect, is he not going to be better?
No, he's more false than my wife's knockers. Come on. I'm in trouble now.
Well, you probably are.
No, anyway. What's he going to do? He's a Scouser.
Yes.
Right? Scousers who moves to Manchester. So he wants to be a man because he don't want to be a Scouser.
What do you think he does? You think he doesn't like his own? I think he's from Aintree. He doesn't like his own.
Yeah, he's an Everton supporter. And he's a blue nose.
Well, there is that problem.
But, yeah, and I think he has a lot to do with Lee. Doesn't he live in Lee or somewhere? Like, I don't really know.
He was the MP for Lee. He was the MP for Lee. That was his constituency.
Yeah. So you know, he might have turned up at the odd rugby league match and got...
Yeah, maybe. He could be a bit of that. But would he not, if there was a general election and you had Keir Starmer standing and Andy Burnham standing, would Burnham not do better than Starmer?
No. I think that the Labour have done so much damage to this country in such a short time that it's killed the country. They know the Labour will never get back in power in our generation now. My nan said to me, God bless her soul, she said to me, you never vote Labour, we couldn't bury the dead, we had rubbish piled high in the 70s, and people forget we had no money, we had strikes everywhere.
Yeah.
And that was and I remember that because I was born in 1970, so we had blackouts, 3-day weeks.
Yep.
And we will get to that again.
Well, do you know what? We're the same era then, Matthew, but it feels like... it feels like that, doesn't it? It feels like, and it also feels like there's, and I hate to say this because I always want to think, optimistically, but I feel like the worst is yet to come.
We're going to have blackouts because we're going to have no sunshine because Millipede has made us all have solar panels and wind turbines that can't go. We're a laughing stock. It's a joke, Ian.
It's quite bizarre. There's quite a lot of elements of life where you feel we're sort of in reverse gear. When politicians start to tell you not to go on holiday or drive your car, you realise we're in really troubled times. This is bonkers.
Do you remember when Brown was Chancellor?
Yeah.
And suddenly the penny dropped that they had no money. And he spent about a whole week just talking about you need to invest in your pensions. You need to invest in your pensions. Yeah. There was a certain spell, and he was telling everyone that we all need to get in pensions because they knew they'd run out of money.
Yep.
They knew they were out of money. He's seen it because he was Chancellor. He'd messed it up completely, and he panicked, and he was telling everyone getting pensions. And this is what's happening now. That's why she was crying. The Chancellor Exchequer was crying when she realised that Starmer was giving billions away just to get rid of a little island. That's why she broke down.
I
would have been crying.
She's thinking, hang on a second, I'd penciled this money in for something else. You're giving it away. To somebody who hasn't even asked for it. Yeah. I hear you.
This money so everyone can have 10 kids.
Yeah.
And now you're not letting me do it because I'm going to have to give it to a load of bloody people I've never Chagos Islands.
Well, it's not even the people, because the people of the Chagos Islands don't want this to happen either. I hear you, Matthew. Thank you very much indeed. Matthew in Warrington on Andy Burnham and the wider issue of Labour's woes. Margaret in Birmingham says, Ian, if Andy Burnham stands, no guarantee he would win. He is still the face of Labour. People have had enough of this government. Whoever is in charge, stay as mayor, Andy. He might be thinking, because the chance that he could not win that by-election is very real. And if he doesn't win it, then he's left with nothing, because he's no longer I think he could still stand as the mayor, remain as the mayor and stand and then resign. But then you end up being a slightly weakened mayor, don't you? A mayor whose heart isn't really in it, who has already told your constituents and your people that actually, I quite like being mayor, but there was a better job I wanted, but I didn't get it, so now I'm back being the mayor. Not a good look. I don't know what the NEC rules say on that, but certainly they've got to OK and green light everything on this. 0344 499 1000. It's 2:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. This one in from Reg is in regards to the government blocking Andy Burnham from running for government. It probably won't bother them at all. It hasn't bothered them blocking 4.5 million people from voting in their local elections now, has it? It's a fair point from Reg. Lines are open. Back to more of your calls shortly. Now, let's bring in this story. President Trump has angered veterans by falsely claiming European troops stayed off the front lines in Afghanistan, despite hundreds from Britain and other allied countries dying in combat. Not to mention, of course, the many more that were injured, life-changingly so, in some of the most catastrophic and upsetting ways. Ash Alexander is a former colonel in the British Army who served in Afghanistan. He's released his first book, Mindful Soldier, just yesterday. This covers this whole area, particularly Afghanistan. Ash, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. Tell us about the book. What was your reasoning for wanting to put pen to paper, to coin the phrase?
Honestly, I'm an accidental author or more a reluctant author, but I've experienced a number of things in my life, both professionally and personally, and friends and clients and others convinced me eventually to put pen to paper. So I did that in the hope that some of the stories and experiences, if paired with some insights and practical tips about how we can all improve our resilience and understand how you build resilience as life throws things at us, then that was really the main reason for doing it. And I'm giving all profits from the book sales, any profit I make, assuming there'll be some, to veterans charities to help those who are who need the help from us.
Which is incredible, and that's amazing to hear that. I would imagine, I mean, you were in a senior position in the British Army. You would have overseen and experienced quite a lot in your time, in particular Afghanistan, as we were just talking about there. What is your overview, firstly? It's worth asking how the hell... I mean, let's remember, Afghanistan has been this basket case forever, that all manner of people have given it a go and tried to work out, what do we do? We think we can make it. Oh, no, we've got a plan. Oh, no, here's another plan. It's been like that for a long time. But the West going in, to coin the phrase, what did you make of that? Was it right that we were ever there?
I think we just have to remember that the reason we went there was in support of the US when Article 5 was invoked. And the only time Article 5 has ever been invoked was by the US, and the rest of the world stepped up. That is why we went in 2001 and then spent, as we all know, the next 20 years trying to set the place up for its own success. Sadly, that didn't happen. So whether or not we were right to go in the first place, we did. And those who went in there, I spent nearly 8 tours of duty in Afghanistan, nearly 4 years of my life spent there. I don't consider that to be wasted time, because we did a lot of good things for the right reasons to help that country. Unfortunately, it didn't play out as we'd hoped, but it's pretty upsetting. I'm sure many of the families who lost loved ones, or those who are still with us but maimed or suffering life-changing injuries will be pretty upset to have heard the language used in the last 24 hours.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, just before we get to that, the way we went in will always divide opinion when it comes to war. The way we came out is often more divisive when it comes to Afghanistan. What's your take on that?
I think, again, not everybody involved in this conversation is perhaps as keen on history and facts as maybe others are, but we have to remember that the timeline for the withdrawal was set by a particular president at the time, and that really, for the locals and the Taliban and the government, really set the clock ticking, and everything that we tried to do thereafter was always going to be a struggle, because they could happily wait us out knowing that our patience and our clock would likely run out before theirs did.
It's a dangerous mission. You did 8 tours, of course. I mean, thank goodness none of you and the guys were on the front line, eh? I mean, that would have been even worse for you, because that's the word out of the White House yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, again, choice of words, pretty unfortunate. And one would hope, given the backlash, that perhaps the administration will take a little bit of a look at the choice of words and maybe have a quiet word, perhaps. But yeah, very galling for those who were absolutely on the front line and could not have got any further forward on that front line. And we have to remember the Danes, for example, who've obviously been in the press very recently as well with the Greenland issue. They lost more soldiers, sailors, and airmen per capita than the US. Yeah. And that is something that we must not forget. And the UK clearly also lost nearly 460 servicemen, 457, I think, servicemen and women lost their lives in the course of that enterprise that was ultimately in support of the US and NATO.
Indeed. I mean, there are people, I would imagine, in the White House who are paid an impressive salary to come up with those numbers before their president makes a statement. But of course, this is Mr. Trump. He says things on the hoof, doesn't always plan what he's going to say. You'd like to think somewhere he will row back. I mean, I would argue, and I'm sure Ash, you might agree with this, that I think his words were significant enough to make another statement to clarify and apologise.
Yeah, given the history, I'm not sure we should expect that. Things will move on. There'll be more words and more statements today, tomorrow, and the next day. It doesn't take away the sting, I'm sure, for those families that are still, in many cases, I'm sure, grieving. And my heart goes out to them, because I know how hard that is, having lost over 60 colleagues and friends over my service, many of whom were Brits, Afghans, Kiwis, Americans. I've carried the caskets and coffins of many different nationalities, all trying to do the right thing in support of that mission. So it is unfortunate, but we have to move on. And that's partly why hopefully my book will help people, that it's all about resilience in all walks of life and how we can build it and how we can get through the challenges that we face, whatever they may be.
Yeah. And I guess, and I did touch on this at the beginning, Ash, that obviously we lost hundreds of members of our military, other countries also. But those that did survive, but with life-changing injuries, I mean, that figure is off the scale. And there are, you mentioned the proceeds of your book, and there's all sorts of charities that have happened and sprung up since Afghanistan. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of stories, and certainly connected stories to these very brave soldiers whose lives were changed forever. It isn't losing limbs is a terrible thing. Losing all of them is, who knows how you get over that, but many of these guys do. But losing your mind as well, and all that goes with it. So the casualties puts that number even greater than the one we've been discussing today. The ramifications are vast.
Yeah, indeed. And there's even something called moral injury, that you don't necessarily, as an individual, have to have been present or been involved in the combat or the incident that caused loss of life or injury. If you are feeling unable that you can influence the outcome, there is still injury that can be created mentally from just feeling helpless in those situations. So, I mean, it's very hard to put a number on the numbers of people who would have been impacted, not just by Afghanistan, but by other conflicts over the last 20 or 30 years. Yeah. But we owe it to those who are suffering, to do anything we can to support them, and that's what I'm committed to try and do. And the two main charities that I'm supporting for the book is the Gurkha Welfare Trust and the Royal British Veterans Enterprise, who do amazing work, along with many other charities, to support those who are in need.
Good work. Mindful Soldier is the title. I mean, I see what you did there to coin the phrase. Mindful Soldier. Just talk us through that briefly, if you could, Ash. I've spoken to many former military personnel who've been in Afghanistan, Iraq and other places. You think as a, we sit on our couch in the evening looking at the TV, you get a little snapshot of some soldiers, walking through a sort of desert area with rocks around. When you're on the ground, I mean, it doesn't matter how many maps somebody gives you and how much intelligence you're able to galvanise. Ultimately, there is a point where you and your guys have got to, you might have guns and all the rest of it. Those guns aren't going to do very much if someone's hiding in that hill with some, devastating amount of firepower or something else. You literally have to, at some stage, just walk out into a place you don't know, a place you've never been. The terrain is rough. The weather in the winter is absolutely bloody freezing. In the summer, it is beyond anything you want to stand in. And you've got to go out there and think, any minute now, I could just be shot, every single one of us. You mentioned resilience, which is central to what your book is about. Where the hell do you get resilience from in that scenario?
Well, resilience takes time to build up, over our lifetimes. And if you don't go through anything hard, you won't really have great reserves of resilience. So the challenge is, and the frustrating thing is, to be very resilient, you generally have to have gone through some tough stuff, which allows you to appreciate the good things. And it will take time, but it is all sort of achievable, as it were. But just talking to your point about not knowing what's going to happen, I mean, this is something that we cover a lot in the book, about being able to adapt and just accept that in life today, it's a very complex world in which we live and we don't have all the answers. And mentally, the sooner we can understand and accept that we don't have all the answers, and rather than seeing risk and threat where the answers aren't there, but seeing that as an opportunity and being able to adapt quickly, that's where we kind of have to get our minds in a sort of safe or healthy place. Yeah. But in Afghanistan, there was one particular base I remember very well in Sangin, which I know has come up a lot today in the news, where there was one particular patrol base of the army where the statistics were that there was a 1 in 4 chance of either losing a limb or being killed every time you left that base, because the threat from the enemy was so great. And I didn't live there or spend much time there, but you can only imagine, as in same in Ukraine today with the threats that they're seeing, just the pressure on young men and women to have to live with that 24/7, knowing that the next hour their whole world could change.
Yeah, and it's not like a challenge on a TV show, is it, where you do it once and go, oh great, I've done that walk, I've done it, did a few miles today, now I'm back at the base, everything's great. You've got to do it the next day and the day after.
Yeah, so you go through these spikes of dopamine that you've survived. I mean, the number of incidents, I've been shot several times, I've been blown up a few times, had a few helicopter crashes, and a suicide bomber tried to kill me once as well. You go through these spikes of, oh my God, I'm still alive. And in some cases you sort of giggle and you can't quite believe that you got through something. But even just that cycle of fear, worry, sort of jubilation or exhilaration that you got through something, that in itself over time can take its toll. And then you've got collective, look at Ukraine collectively, they don't get a break. They never get a break. And that is something that we also need to be looking at to the future. How do we support countries and communities at that scale who will all need to heal and prepare for the phase after this trauma?
Yeah. It's understandable when people talk about PTSD and the like, and I was reading some stuff recently about the First World War, and some of these young guys that you will be more familiar with that part of history than me because of clearly because of what you do. I mean, it's beyond belief. It's almost too much to read sometimes, the experiences of some of those guys, and they were so young and so inexperienced, and there was no kind of system after, for those that were lucky enough to come back, there was no real system. And if you said, I'm suffering, I feel, stressed, I doubt the word even existed, you'd have either been laughed at or ostracized, probably. We're a little better now, but still not fully there, I guess.
Well, at least efforts are being made. I mean, when I joined 30 years ago, it wasn't something that was discussed. And when you came back and you'd survived, it was sort of, well, lucky you, crack on with the next thing. I'm glad to say, knowing from friends who are that they're still serving, that the system is now much more aware of those things that are needed to make sure that people are coping and giving them strategies to do so, particularly if they're in roles where they're going in and out of this kind of cycle of trauma and conflict more routinely than others. But, we're not there yet, but at least we do have a plan now.
Listen, Ash, good luck with the book. It's out now. It's called Mindful Soldier. As you said, the proceeds are all going to the relevant charities. And great to see you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ash Alexander Cooper, MBE, former colonel in the British Army. I mean, you heard what he went through and his colleagues. So it comes as a bit of an affront to just basic manners, politeness, decency and accuracy. when the American president says, well, they weren't really on the front lines, were they? Let's talk to Howard in North Devon. On this point, Howard, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Purely an observation. I'm not very happy with Donald Trump and what he said. I mean, I think we had over 500 soldiers killed or injured in this Afghanistan. Every night there was faces on the screen of soldiers killed in action and wounded. I would like somebody to send Donald Trump a video of Royal Wooden Basset and the coffin is passing through. Then maybe he would rethink his statements when he sees what sacrifices we did make. Otherwise, I don't know what else to say about the man. He comes up with some duties.
I mean, it's interesting because this has really, upset a lot of genuine Trump supporters as well. Reform in this country, the party that is arguably closer to the political thinking of somebody like Trump. Pretty much everybody I've spoken to, Jonathan Gullis was presenting here a little earlier, absolutely furious at what the American president had said. And of course, he's just talking about Afghanistan there. I mean, we could talk about Iraq, right? I mean, there would surely be another example of where the British military could not have been more up close and personal with the Americans and suffered the devastating loss of personnel as well.
Well, you can go back to the Korean War if you like.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, we could go on, right? I mean, it's just a stupid thing to say, that America is the only country that has actually gone out and really been on the front line of anything. It's daft.
Well, I'll agree on one thing. We couldn't have done without them in 1943, but that's history.
Yeah, no, that's true. And thank goodness for the Americans in so many respects, but thank goodness for all of the other Allied members as well in efforts around the world. And in particular, I mentioned Iraq, but we're focusing there on Afghanistan because that's what Mr. Trump was referring to. It would, a 10-year-old who'd studied a little bit of history could have known that fact, right?
I often wonder, had the Japanese not bombed Pearl Harbor, would the Americans have entered in or just leave us to it?
Yeah.
And then perhaps they could have traded with a united German Europe.
We will thankfully never know. On that point, Howard, thank you for your call, sir. Really appreciate it. Howard in North Devon. 0344 499 1000. Dan in Halifax says, President Trump's disgraceful words against our military are not the first from his camp. J.D. Vance also said very similar things not too long ago. I vaguely remember that now you've said that. I can't recall exactly what, but that is ringing a bit of a bell. Dan, thanks for that. Lines open, more calls from you on the way. It's 10 to 3. This is Talk.
The Home Office have indicated to us as a council they're only using it for a temporary measure for 12 months. Given the amount of investment, and they've spent potentially up to millions in this site over the last few months, I suspect they're looking at least a minimum of 5 years, which is completely inappropriate for our local community. And it will have a massive impact long-term on our local economy, on our local businesses, shops, etc. It is a significant impact.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We'll go to the phones in just a second. Don't go away, James. Don't go away, Stuart. Loads more to talk about. Just gone 10 to 3. We've got the voice of doom. For those who don't know, this is the mystery voice, but it's political. Left wing, right wing, young, old, dead or alive. Who is this?
This is your chance.
It's day 3 of this one. Fairly new. Here it is again.
This is your chance.
And again.
This is your chance.
If you think you know, don't be phoning in. There aren't no prizes for this. 87222. 87222. We'll tell you on the other side of the news who it is, only if we get a right answer to this.
This is your chance.
87222. James in Portsmouth. What have you got for us, James? Afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for taking the call.
Pleasure.
First time caller to talk.
Welcome.
Love your show. I'm a veteran. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, you know, the comments that Donald Trump has made and J.D. Vance, because there was no front line. It was asymmetric warfare.
Well, that's a very good point. No one's really raised this. This wasn't the Second World War. This wasn't people saying, "Oh, there's the divide. Off we go, boys."
Absolutely. And I remember, Iraq 2003. I took a unit up to help the Americans, because the Americans were having a dreadful time, and we had, skills that the Americans didn't have. So we went to help them out, the U.S. Marines. So the comments are unfounded and and clumsy at best.
Yeah. Is he likely to apologise, do you think?
I don't think he. I don't think he will.
No, he's not going to come up with. He's not going to convene a press conference and apologise. But I wonder, the next time he does give a press conference, there might be a journalist in the audience who says, "Oh, by the way, Mr. President, would you, care to row back on those comments?" And maybe there he will. James, thank you very much indeed. Nobody disputes that. America is the greater fighting force with literally more men per capita. As Ash, the previous Army colonel we spoke with, said, it was Denmark, actually, that suffered the greater loss in Afghanistan. Of course, thousands of American veterans, American personnel that went to Afghanistan and other places lost their lives, and, others suffered the same kind of injuries we were talking about that our military personnel suffered as well. Nobody is disputing their effort, but to suggest it was kind of almost just us and, there's a few other guys sort of in the background helping is not okay. Stuart's in Somerset. Back to Keir Starmer, Andy Burnham and all that's going on over there between Manchester and Westminster. Stuart, what are you making of this?
Hello, good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for taking my call.
It's all right.
I have to be honest with you. I think that Keir Starmer is in an absolute nightmare position, because I can't imagine under any circumstances whatsoever that the NEC, the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party, will allow Andy Burnham to sit as a potential MP to take up the position that's become available because of the MP resigning.
So you think they're going to stand in the way from the word go, and it's a non-starter?
To use a very old phrase, turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
Well,
in this
true.
particular context, Keir Starmer is a turkey.
But that's about Keir Starmer's career, isn't it, as opposed to the success of the Labour Party? I mean, if you're a Labour voter, it shouldn't be like that. It should be about what improves their success.
Well, this is why I actually think that Andy Burnham, although I'm a centrist, sort of slightly right-leaning conservative, there is absolutely no way on God's green earth that I will vote for the current Conservative Party as it's currently formatted. That's a whole other debate that we could have to talk for hours about. But if Andy Burnham did sit, I'd rather think he'd win with a much smaller majority. But I don't think Andy Burnham will sit, because it's a classic lose-lose scenario. The Labour Party are going to be biblically defeated in the May elections, and however you dress it up, I can't see any positives from Andy Burnham leaving a very successful tenure as the Mayor of Manchester to throw his hat in the ring to try and sort of pull the iron out of the fire when they've only realistically got 3.5 years maximum. The other thing as well that strikes me with regards to Keir Starmer, I genuinely think that he will hang on with every breath in his body rather than do the honourable thing and walk away.
100%.
I have never in my life been so politically unable to put my hand on who I would vote for. Lots of my friends, I served for 22 years in the Royal Marine Commandos, and about going over to what the gentleman who's just been on the show has talked about, what's happening now on a global level is it's when you've got someone like me, a moderate conservative, who has nowhere to go, because there's lots and lots about reform I like, but I think if you scrape the very thin veneer of respectability, there's an awful lot under the shell of Starmer and the sitting constituent MPs they've got that causes me a great deal of concern. Is Kemi Badenoch and her politics the answer? Absolutely not, because however you look at it, you spoke about this on your show a few days ago, or one of your colleagues did, there is no doubt whatsoever at least a third of the current Conservative Party are anti-Brexit, are neoliberal wets, and however hard Kemi Badenoch tries to persuade them or pressure them to changing their views, that is not going to happen. I just hope that in the fullness of time, some semblance of normality gives me, Stuart, somewhere to go. At the moment, I am politically in no man's land.
Yeah, no, there's a sort of a wilderness, a homelessness that many people are feeling in that respect. Stuart, it's a great call and brutally honest as well, which I think reflects quite a lot of people. I think with reform, there are a new party, relatively speaking, so some people do say, well, there is a veneer of, wow, this is booster rockets territory, but underneath naturally there is a caution because it's new, and therefore can it do it with the lack of experienced people that are needed. It's not an argument not to do it, by the way, otherwise you'd never have a new party ever, and you'd be consigned forever to a two-party system that we've had for a long time, which is why reform are kind of there. Exciting times, interesting times. Stuart, thank you very much indeed for that. We've got loads to get through in the next section, including the voice of doom. Do you know who this is?
This is your chance.
87222 if you knew or no. Let's get the news at 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yeah, it is the afternoon empire. It is the home of common sense, the voice of reason, you name it. What do we got here? We are talking, of course, about the interesting emergence of a potential threat to Keir Starmer. We're hearing that allies of the Prime Minister are planning to block Andy Burnham from running for Parliament in a Manchester by-election. This is Andrew Gwynn, the Labour MP for Gorton and Denton. He's stepping down from his position. This would give Andy Burnham the first chance he's had to slide in there to what was a safe Labour seat. Will it continue to be so? And a chance, of course, to then move forward as leader and therefore Prime Minister of the Labour Party. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. Would Burnham change Labour's luck? I think it's a fascinating question. If you're a Labour supporter, it's a compelling question, particularly as a voting member as well. But if you're a member of another party, what does that mean? Does that increase the threat to you? Thoughts on that? Also, as we've been touching on, Labour have announced plans to deny 4.5 million people a vote, with two of Britain's biggest councils allowing the delay to the elections. And they are Tory councils as well. Suffolk and Norfolk join 27 others who've now been given permission to cancel the May elections. It is outrageous. I think that's a given now. What do you make of it all? And are you in one of those areas? And hundreds of illegal dumps are operating across England, including at least 11 so-called super sites that contain tens of thousands of tons of rubbish. These are the disgusting fly-tipping animals that think nothing of just lobbing a manky old mattress, the belongings of your kitchen bin and half a sofa into a railway viaduct, the back alley, or a farmer's field or a lay-by. Don't give a hoot, these characters. Who the hell are they? Thoughts on that one as well? 0344 499 1000. We're going to go back to your calls. Voice of Doom, have we got a winner? Find out in just a bit. Loads of comment coming through. And this story, which we touched on a little earlier. President Donald Trump's son-in-law. He's Jared Kushner. I'm not quite sure of his qualifications in the world of international diplomacy, but he's certainly been given a high-profile task. He's been showing off a Gaza master plan, if you like, an estate agent brochure of what Gaza could look like. Coastal tourism corridors, high-rises. He's revealing the whole lot in rebuilding the war-torn area. Here's what he said.
And then New Gaza. It could be a hope, it could be a destination, have a lot of industry, and really be a place that the people there can thrive, have great employment. Once this starts going, we think there should be 100% full employment and opportunity for everybody there. And we have a lot of data on what can be, but we think that this really gives the Gazan people an opportunity to live their aspirations. But it all starts with security.
Sounds very sure, even slightly excited about it. Let's speak with Jonathan Sacerdoti, writer and broadcaster. Jonathan, good afternoon to you. I mean, it felt a little bit almost satirical seeing this. I mean, the fact they had the brochure and they'd gone to work on the AI platforms, it seemed like, really? I mean, was it a bit insensitive? Was it a bit crude, a bit crass?
The plan that Jared Kushner announced there was obviously quite comic in its ridiculousness. I mean, 100% employment in the Gaza Strip. Not only is that basically impossible anywhere in the world, but I would say the Gaza Strip's probably the least possible place. Yes. At the moment, most of them don't have schools to go to if they're children. Many of them are living in tents. So he also said that they could come up with this master plan to redevelop it, like those sort of Jetsons-style skyscrapers he showed, fresh out of ChatGPT or Grok. He said that could be done in 2 or 3 years, because that's how quickly they can move in the Middle East. But, of course, most Middle East countries that build massive projects like that at breakneck speed do it with slave labour from immigrants. So there were plenty of holes in this plan. But I think, as with all things to do with Donald Trump's foreign policy in particular, one has to look at the sort of broad picture rather than the specifics. It was thin on details, though Kushner said they'd done a lot of work in research and they were taking tips for best practice from around the world in all of the necessary areas. But the ultimate question really is whether or not Hamas is going to disarm. And they said they would in the agreement originally that brought about the ceasefire. They signed that, and that's what Kushner said. He said, we don't have a plan B. He said they said they'd do it. That's our agreement, and that he is planning for catastrophic success. Now, I foresee a bit more of the catastrophe for Hamas, at least, and a bit less of the success. But it's also quite precarious for Israel because this sort of momentum is designed to carry people along with it. I think that the idea that Hamas will accept this is very, very slim chance. And even if they say they do, of course they won't. They'll lie, and they'll constantly make every effort they can to divert aid, as is basically the way of all Palestinian mainstream politicians ever.
Indeed. I did check Zoopla. It's not on the listings yet, so I'm assuming we can't take it fully seriously. Would it have been better, do you think, if Mr Kushner had at least talked initially about schools and hospitals as distinct, regardless of where anybody is on the wider geopolitical debate about wars and who's right, who's wrong, just putting that aside, would that not have been a far more sensitive, persuasive way to talk about this?
I think in one way it might have been, but this is very much the Trump difference. I think that Donald Trump wants to show that he does things differently. He's got a grand vision. Rather than making this granular and talking about these sorts of things, I think that he wants his administration to show that they have a massive image, a massive picture of what's going to happen in the long term, and that basically the Palestinians need to sign up for it. It's very similar to the deal that he offered them actually during his first term in office, which was called Peace to Prosperity. Of course, they famously chose neither peace nor prosperity. They rejected it outright, all Palestinians. Now, that plan didn't touch the Gaza Strip. That was just the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. But this time, it's being applied to Gaza much in the same way. And the idea is to bring them out of poverty, to give them opportunity. I think the real motivation here is to offer them everything short of a magic unicorn to ride into the sunset on, and to show that when they reject this, as he said, well, that's the end. You've had the chance. We told you to demilitarize, and you'll get all of this given to you on a plate, effectively. But if you don't do that in the time limit, then, you know, the old Trump threat of all hell will break loose, and we've yet to see what that will look like. But I think that the aim is really to paint such a glamorous big picture vision of the future that he can say, we tried. You can't say we didn't try. He would say, I mean, I was speaking to a source close to the decision makers on this in the States, and he told me, you know, Trump is the most pro-Palestinian president ever with these actions. I can see how they make that argument, but I don't think that necessarily Hamas or the Palestinians will necessarily see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, essentially they've just drawn Dubai, haven't they, or a version of. So we will see how that one rolls on. You mentioned about Hamas and disarmament and the like. It's interesting that Jonathan Powell, who's Keir Starmer's security advisor, is apparently lobbying America to allow Hamas to retain some of their personal weaponry. Now, that to me sounds all shades of weird, bizarre and dangerous, so much so that I have to think there's a smarter plan and I'm just not seeing it. Or is there?
No, I don't think so, and I think that that is very charitable of you after this government's record so far in more or less everything. I think it's maybe, as the Israelis have said, an attempt to stay relevant, just to have an opinion or something to say. It's been squarely rejected, of course, by Israel, quite rightly. That this whole point of this war was that they have more or less defeated Hamas and more or less got rid of them compared to previous wars. They can't be allowed to just rearm or keep their arms, as he's suggesting. I mean, there are said to be something like 60,000 Kalashnikovs in the Gaza Strip. Benjamin Netanyahu has said all of those have to be surrendered. Then, of course, they have to give up all of the weapons-making facilities, the tunnels, because we know what they'll do otherwise. They'll spend the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years rearming, building up again for what they'll call Al-Aqsa Flood 2050, chance to slaughter more Jews again. This is their raison d'etre. They're not there to make peace. They're not there to compromise. They are a bloodthirsty, Islamist, jihadist organisation, sponsored so far by Iran. They have to be stopped as conclusively as possible. And then Trump is saying, if they agree to that, then the Palestinian people in Gaza have the possibility of this bright Dubai-like future. But that Jonathan Powell comment is just, I think, well, it's ridiculous.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, again, we keep using this word today that it almost sounds satirical. You know, you say to it's kind of got something of the Monty Python about it. You say to a terror organisation, right, we've disarmed you boys, but here's some of your guns back because we think you'll probably behave better.
Yeah, could you just be a little bit less terroristy? Could you just use a few fewer guns to kill just a few fewer Jews. Of course, that doesn't wash. It doesn't wash for Israel. It won't wash for America. Shouldn't wash for the Palestinian people either. He's saying it because he says, you know, he has this experience in the Northern Ireland process. But of course, again, just showing a complete lack of understanding of this process. These are jihadists. These are people who believe in a sort of apocalyptic, multi-generational Islamic battle against Jews, all non-Muslims, the West, America, even Britain. This is not how you negotiate with them. What Trump is doing is actually very successful so far. He managed to get back all of those hostages. Nobody really thought that would happen, and I think that he's riding on that because he says, and his people say, you didn't think we could do that. We managed that. Trust us. We know how to negotiate with these kind of barbarians. You need to go along with the way we're doing it. You offer a very big carrot and you threaten a very big stick. Of course, watching what happens in Iran, people will be saying, is he going to use the stick? Is anything going to happen, or will it just plough ahead because he's after a Nobel Peace Prize or whatever it might be? And all of those questions remain. Trump is a man that deals in uncertainty, in chaos, and in trust and power and bullying, which is a very hard thing to accept, especially if you don't like him, as most of this Labour government in our country doesn't.
And on that point, Jonathan, great to have you on, sir. Jonathan's written a lot about that today in The Spectator too. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for your time. Jonathan Sacerdoti, writer and broadcaster on the curious case of the real estate boys on the mooch around Gaza, with beautiful, lovely coastal tourism corridors, high-rises that would make the Jetsons blush. Thank you to him. Back to you in just a second. Couple of messages coming in. Becca says, one good thing. Back to Andy Burnham. One good thing, if Burnham gets leader, we won't have any more strikes, because he'll just give in to the trade unions and give them what they want every time. They know where the bodies are buried, says Becca. Good point. This one from Barry, who reiterates what I said at the beginning. Burnham is not the Messiah. The country is in a shambles. It will remain a shambles until we get a great leader. He's not the answer. It's kind of interesting from those who are sort of diehard. Yeah, Andy Burnham, definitely Andy Burnham. Oh, yeah, Andy's the man to do it, you know. Definitely Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham, Andy Burnham. We've got all these voices that are out there at the moment. Really? It's just Andy Burnham, OK? It's just Andy Burnham. I mean, he's all right, you know, if you're a lefty, if you're a Labour person, it's Andy Burnham. But it's, as was just said, he's not the Messiah. He's not Gandhi. He's not any of those great speakers of our time. It's just Andy from Aintree. Fine fella, you know, nice to his family, fairly honest chap. If you live next door, he put your bins out when you went on holiday. You know, he's that bloke. Clever, yeah, working class background, amiable, relatable. He's got all of that, but it's just Andy Burnham. This is Dave down in London on local elections. Dave, what have you got for us?
And how are you?
I'm good as gold at this end. What's going on, Dave?
Yeah, Andy Burnham. No, he's not a Messiah. He's a very naughty boy.
Indeed he is, yes. Well, he might. Keir Starmer's going to make him a naughty boy and probably put a great big brick wall in the way of him moving forwards.
Yeah, but what you just said about him is a point I just wanted to make about local councils.
OK.
Bear with me, as quick as I can. I went to my first ever council meeting in my entire life last Monday.
Good for you. How was it?
Well, briefly, as brief as I can, it was Hounslow Council.
Yeah.
I did a lot of research before I went because I didn't know how this whole game even works. Yeah. So I did a lot of research and I found out Hounslow is made up of 22 wards, of which I live in one of the wards.
Sure.
And then they put 3 wards together. Mm-hmm. So there's an area ward, and then every quarter they have a meeting where you can go along. Gotcha. So I went along to that quarterly meeting of one of the area wards, of which there are 7.
Yeah.
For which there are 9 councillors, 3 per ward.
Okay.
Luckily, by complete and utter chance, the head of Hounslow Council was there, as well as his CFO, to go through the Hounslow budget.
Oh, good.
They did a nice presentation, lots of graphs and charts and PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff. And now the big moment. The big moment now is, anyone got any questions? For which one of the residents that was at the meeting seemed to have the most poignant question. But the councillors' questions were shocking. And I then got to the point of thinking, OK, the councillors are there to hold the council head to account, But a bit like you said about Andy Burnham, they're just nice people that put the bins out. They half the time they'd say, I don't know much about financing figures, but at which point as the chair I would have said, could you hold your question for maybe next Thursday?
Yeah, wait till we get on, to the debate about the new netball pitch. In the meantime, let's get some
in the meantime,
proper discussion.
So one resident, so they are, and by the way, Hounslow is going to benefit from the Fair Finance Initiative by £60 million.
Well, what
so
about
that means someone else is paying for it. So if you live in Kensington and Chelsea, you're probably paying for it. But the good news is Hounslow's been bunged an extra £60 million. Now, someone in the audience, I'm getting very quickly now, someone in the audience then said, our council tax has gone up the max 4.99% last year, 4.99% this year. And you just mentioned the 3-year plan. What have you put in the plan for the council tax increases for the next 3 years?
Gotcha.
The CFO guy went, well, we haven't that's not all been decided yet, blah, blah. This resident pushed him again and said, you're the CFO. You said there's a 3-year plan. You, as the CFO, must have recommended what's going in as the council tax increase. He flustered a while and then he said, I quote, I am recommending the max for the next 3 years. So if anybody who is listening to your show who's in Hounslow and you don't know it, don't think you're waiting each year to see what the tax increase is going to be.
Which you normally do, yes.
He said, and it's on record, and it's videoed, and it's on the website, he said, I, the CFO, that's a pretty high position, right? You're the main guy. I, the CFO, will be recommending to the council members, of which they're all Labour anyway, the full increase of 4.99% is applied. Now, the resident asked that question. Nobody else around the so-called councillors panel. So my thoughts then were, who actually decides who these councillors are? And when you look at it, it's just so
it's kind of like all of this stuff. We sort of said it at the beginning. Kind of gets a free pass because nobody really gives a toss about local politics, even though they should do. We do a bit. We say we do when we're in the pub. Look, you've seen the state of the roads. Look, what are they spending our money on? But we don't. I mean, well done and full house points, Dave, on going to the meeting. My neighbour did it fairly recently, and he also went to a parish meeting as well, which was even more bewildering. But nonetheless, it's great, and we should engage. We complain about politicians, but then we don't really bother to find out and engage. I'm glad you did, and keep us up to date if you go to another one, because I'd be absolutely fascinated to know what you make of it. Lovely to speak, Dave. I've got to move, no other reason than time. Thank you for that. One in from Gary, who says, I know this won't be popular, so you may not read it out, but whilst Trump's language was clumsy and insensitive, and as a draft dodger himself, he's in no position to personally criticise the commitments of others to fight. If you look at the raw casualty numbers from the conflicts in Afghanistan, then as President of the United States, he does have the right to make a point about the unequal distribution of combat deaths among the Allied forces, and here's why. When Trump talks about Europe, you need to remember that most of the time he's referring to the European Union as it is now, i.e. without the UK, and the truth is that those 27 European countries lost just over 400 troops between them in Afghanistan, whereas the US lost 2,400. So that's 6 times fewer combat deaths from a union of European countries with a considerably larger population than the US. Bottom line is that whilst he is wrong to claim that European troops didn't go on the front line, the casualty stats suggest that it was the US troops doing a disproportionate amount of heavy lifting. Germany, for example, lost 90 men in that conflict. If it had lost them in the same ratio to the population as the US, they would have lost upwards of 700. I take the point. I know I'm happy to read that out, Gary, and I think that will probably be the interpretation many people make in favour of what Trump was trying to say. I was trying to extrapolate from what Gary was saying. I mean, I don't know how many German troops were there. Is Gary working that out as a proportion of? Because they may have lost 90 men. I don't know how many they sent. If they only sent, what a percentage is of that, because it's widely said that Denmark actually, as a percentage, lost more than anyone else in the Allied effort, including America. But it would still be a clumsy thing for Trump to say, even if you crunch the numbers in the way that Gary is suggesting, because, of course, everybody who's involved at whatever level all put their life on the line. Gary, thank you for that. 0344 499 1000. Are we doing the Voice of Doom now, or are we doing it after the break, Finn? Should we do it now? OK, let's do it now. Have we got a winner? Earlier, before the news, we played you a voice. Here it is.
This is your chance.
These are some of the guesses. Christopher Hitchens. It does sound a bit like Christopher Hitchens. It sounds like Rupert Lowe and it sounds like Christopher Hitchens, and it's not either of those. Ted Heath, never. Larry Grayson, no. Jeremy Thorpe, it is not. Danny Kruger, no. Lord Francis Maud, no. Nobody's got it right. It rolls over. It's back on. I'm not here on Monday. Tuesday. It's back on. Do you know, I just forgot I was off on Monday. I wish I was having a Beano somewhere, but I'm not. Lines are open. 0344 499 1000. Who is here? It's Peter Cardwell, isn't it, on Monday? Finn, the producer, doesn't know. I only know because Peter Cardwell told me yesterday. That's how I know. So, yes, it is Peter Cardwell tomorrow. Our lines are open. Back to your calls and comments coming next on Talk.
Couldn't believe when I heard this report yesterday that the man could be frankly so stupid and so outrageous as to make those comments. I understand that many advisors on the British side who heard about this before he uttered those words, and as you said, we lost 457 of our own young people fighting a very gritty campaign up until 2014. I was talking with my own middle son just about an hour ago who did a tour in Afghanistan as well as previously in Iraq, and he says, actually, Dad, the man's completely mad.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Barry says, but I read Barry's, apologies. Barry was the man who said he's not the Messiah. This from John. Burnham has been put in the picture just so that Labour have something else to offer when they get hammered in the May elections. They are grasping at straws. They will get hammered in the May elections. I would find it extraordinary that anything could possibly happen between now and then to not get hammered in the May elections. Lots of things, including the current state of play and where we'll be in the next 15, we're only 15 weeks away, the May elections. And the big ones to get, there's a couple of mayoralties, as I'm sure you know, but the big ones are Wales, the entirety of Wales, and Scotland. The whole thing is up for grabs there. Now, Reform probably won't make magnificent inroads in Scotland. They know that, but they will make some severe dents. But in Wales, I mean, this could be where Reform take Wales. The significance of that is so big, I genuinely couldn't find the words, if I tried right now, to describe that. It would be cataclysmic for the current government. It would be an earthquake for the system and the establishment, whatever phrase you choose to use. It's massive. And if they took it, then you begin to see the writing really on the wall for Keir Starmer. And then there's all the council seats as well. I know there's 4.5 million of you that will be denied a vote, but for the rest, it's still significant enough to cause a genuine problem, a stink that will never leave the office of Prime Minister, all the while Keir Starmer is in it. What do they do about that? How do they get around it? What are their options? They have no. They've got to sit and take this one now. Labour aren't going anywhere. Okay, they're going to be the government till 2029. However, Keir Starmer might be going somewhere. Can he really carry on? And how long do you hang on for when you're in that place? I mean, precedent suggests, well, you just hang on for as long as you can. Because you're thinking, well, hang on, what? If I did 4 years, that's longer than Rishi Sunak. It's longer than, probably longer than Gordon Brown. So longer than, not longer than David Cameron, but longer than all the others. So I'm up there. I'll be the longest serving Labour leader since Tony Blair. Well, Labour Prime Minister since Tony Blair. And that's the way these guys were. I mean, it's all about vanity. And, you know, whether it's Trump, whether it's Nigel Farage, whether it's Keir Starmer, this is about your own CV, OK? Yes, they care about certain core issues. This is about you, mainly, which is why you should never trust politicians. You should always question them, and you should always never, ever look at them like your member of your family, as people do discuss their political heroes. They're not your dad or your mum, all right? They're people who want a good gig because it's good for them. Boris Johnson's the greatest example of that. Let's go to Tony in Lancashire on the current state of play and all things connected. Tony, what have you got for us? Hi.
Oh, I'm sick of this Labour government. Anyway, how are you, Ian?
I'm as good as gold. What's going on, Tone?
Right, I went to my local council asking why we're being denied our right to vote, denies our right to vote, basically.
Did you go to a meeting?
No, I just went into town hall.
You went into the reception there?
Yeah.
Right, what did the person on the reception say?
Yeah.
I'm a receptionist, how do I know?
The woman turned around and says, oh, the councils are reshuffling.
Yeah.
And then I turned around, likely bloody story. More like you just don't want reform to get in, that's all. Yeah. And he kind of admitted it in a way, so I had one bloke calling me earlier on, or saying with Labour government, oh, that's the way it is. What do you mean? No, it's not the way it is. I know it's the way it is at the bloody moment, but I'm getting sick of it with this Labour government. Like, go back to 70s and 80s and 90s, right? There were no such thing as universal credit. Yeah. You had to look for a job. If you didn't have a job, you had no money. You could walk into a job at the time. And yet, I was listening to bloody Kevin O'Sullivan, 1.8 million going on universal credit and don't need to look for work.
Yeah, that's since Labour have been in power. That's the additional people that are not forced to work. I think they have the same approach to benefits as they have to channel migration, to be honest.
Well, we don't want it. It's like moving them out of bloody hotels into barracks. We don't want them here. Get them out. For these Chinese.
Did you say all this in the council hall?
Pardon?
Did you say all of this in the council hall? And if you did, at what point did they escort you out?
They weren't too happy with what I was saying.
Poor Michelle, the receptionist, never thought her day was going to end up like that, did she?
No. But the thing is, I'm sick of this Labour government. Yeah. They're just so thick and unbelievable. It's like I was having a talk with one of my mates earlier on. You got these Labour voters, they're still mourning. They're still mourning, but you're still voting for this. Oh.
And listen, Tony, I can help your blood pressure here. I've got the perfect antidote, because you don't need to panic. It's all going to get better, because Andy Burnham is coming to your rescue.
Oh, really? He's another traitor and all. I can't even stand the guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's only down the... Whereabouts in Lancashire are you, Tony?
Blackburn.
All right, OK, you're not too far away.
Another thing I want to talk about, this Islamic what's rising. That's going in Blackburn, but they don't bloody mention it.
Right, well, you need to see Michelle on the reception. She'll sort it out.
Aye, all right. I've been banned now because when I'm going on about all this, she took me out, really.
Did she?
Yeah.
Not physically.
I think it's just ridiculous, this Labour government. They need to be kicked out now.
I think, listen, Tony, you should be running the place. I think you get a lot of votes. I love your passion, Tony. Thank you. We suffer from a lack of passion. We suffer from complacency. We suffer with status quo junkies. That's what's ruined this great country. Groupthink. Let's just carry on, as it were. Yeah, I know there's a few things we can twiddle with and mess with a bit, but fundamentally, let's keep things as they are. Too much bloody hassle to start changing systems and moving stuff around. Universal credit, 1.8. Yeah, stick them on the universal credit. Otherwise, we've got to find a way of solving the mental health crisis, and that's much more expensive. So universal credit will do that. It is that we live in a sort of a very it's kind of sort of like a bit of a Danny Boyle movie, you know, like a 28 Days Later moment where you look around and you think, well, what, you know, where is everybody? What's gone on? You know, where's Tony? Why is he not shouting at Michelle in the town hall anymore when this country used to be great? He's legged it for the hills. Where's Andy Burnham? He's gone as well. It feels we are in a sort of state of, it is the tumbleweed moment, as somebody mentioned a little bit earlier. We're a bit knackered, aren't we? Is Burnham the man to liven it all up? 0344 499 1000. And fly tipping as well. That's another major ache in the rear, isn't it? We'll talk about that in a couple of moments as well. 3:30, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Terry says, regarding Trump's comments about our military, no more royal visits for Mr. Trump ever if the royals have anything to do with him. As a complete betrayal of our military, they need to send a strong message to him now that after what he said, it will not be tolerated, and they need to cut all ties. Do you know, it's interesting. I was saying, you know, the kind of Trump derangement syndrome, which I think is actually the very reverse of what it is. Trump derangement syndrome, of course, is a sort of, it's almost kind of sixth form style insult. Well, it's not an insult, it's laughable. At anybody who criticises Donald Trump. Now, of course, if you're an American president, it should be compulsory that you criticise the American president, like any other politician for that matter. Being critical is, you know, part and parcel of the democratic process. So Trump derangement syndrome, to me, are the die-hard loyalists who, regardless of what he does, will still remain die-hard loyal. You could punch your grandmother and people go, oh, thank you very much, Mr. Trump. That's very kind of you. Badge of honour. Badge of honour, Mr. President. But actually, having said that, this story about the troops has changed all of that, I think. We're having a lot of voices that would ordinarily be on the right and therefore perhaps, just typically speaking, be supporters of Donald Trump, or at least understanding of Donald Trump, who are outraged by what he said. Jonathan Gullis was presenting here earlier. He's now a Reform politician. Disgusted by what had been said. We'll wait and see what happens. Nationwide, there are about 8,000, did you know this, illegal waste sites holding a whopping 13 million tonnes of rubbish. Some are so large they risk the health of nearby rivers and people, of course. They're also causing a financial hole, with avoided landfill tax estimated at £1.63 billion. Authorities are trying to crack down, with over 700 illegal tips shut between 2024 and 2025. Let's speak with Councillor James Mustoe, Cornwall County Councillor. James, good afternoon to you. I should add, of course, you're one of the politicians that shouldn't be criticised because you're a nice bloke.
Oh, well, I try. Thanks, Ian.
Not at all. Listen, I mean, fly tipping comes across the desk of every council, of course. I live in Kent. It's a huge issue there. I know in Cornwall you have issues too. Spotting it, identifying it are one thing. Dealing with it is quite another.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we live in a very beautiful place of the world down here in Cornwall, and I mean, I see small scale fly tipping all the time. I think I got in the newspapers a couple of years ago after I called them quite a rude word after I found a load of fly tipping that blocked a back road, and yeah, that's sort of one scale of fly tipping. The stuff that you're talking about, these unauthorised dumps, I see that there's a 50,000 ton dump in Cornwall at Camborne, I believe, and that's on a whole other scale. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, I mean, we're used to seeing, and I'm sure you do this, when you're driving in your car and you see a lay-by and someone's put a mattress and half a wardrobe in it, you think, at what point did a fellow human being make the conscious decision, I know what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick this in my car, I'm going to drive up the road, and the first lay-by I see, I'm just going to chuck it in there. I mean, you wonder for the gene pool at those points what the heck is going on. But as you rightly point out there, James, on the bigger scale, I mean, these are dumps that are often, well, they certainly visually look bigger than the official local dump.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's I mean, you could probably see it from space. It's like commercialized fly tipping. I don't know, they must be making a ton of money off it, but it's just absolutely, I mean, it looks like the sort of thing you'd see in like a war zone or something like that.
Yes.
And it's in our countryside, some of these things you wouldn't see it. I mean, obviously the nature of them, you don't see it from the road necessarily because they've hidden them away, but they're causing tons of pollution, and like you said earlier, they're leaching into our rivers, going into our seas, getting into the food chain, and it's just not right.
Is one of the problems, I mean, firstly you've got to identify the people, and whether there's some people even suggest this is organised crime, sort of not to make light of it, sort of mafia style. It's not just the odd bloke dropping off a knackered IKEA wardrobe. This is literally, people running fly tipping services. In fact, I think there was a documentary, might have been the BBC, where there was a you called a number if you wanted the man with the van to come and take your stuff away. And they checked all over the country and it was the same number, no matter what region you were in, which rather suggests this is, clearly organised stuff. But so you firstly got to catch them. But the penalties, isn't that one of the areas where there's a problem? Because matey with his mattress and his wardrobe in the lay-by is not likely to go to jail for that. He's probably going to get a 70 quid fine and told not to do it again.
Yeah, so I mean, that sort of thing, that's a sort of civil, I think it's like a civil issue.
Yes, I think it is.
They should be going after them and issuing fines as a deterrent.
Yep.
I think the council should be publicising it and making sure, because it's one of those things where everyone's always moaning at your council for not filling in the potholes, and it actually demonstrates that the council can do something and actually make a positive difference and is out there catching these people.
Yeah.
The sort of thing that you're showing there now with these aerial shots of like tons and tons and tons of waste, that's something that lies with the Environment Agency, I believe, and they need that is much bigger crime, and the fines and prison sentences, it should be, if they don't get them already, that should be much larger in order to to act as a deterrent as to why people shouldn't be doing this.
So what's the word on the Cornwall street then when it comes to county council meetings on this? Does it crop up regularly? Is there an initiative, James? Is there anything that can be done? Who's leading the way on this?
Well, I mean, I actually put something, so in, dialing it back a little bit, I mean, there's loads of these community, like, litter picking groups and things like that in Cornwall, and we, I run one of them, and we all go out and we all pick up litter, we report fly tips, and we do these things ourselves, and I actually put something to our council late last year about doing what we call a cleaner Cornwall strategy, keep Cornwall clean, and that's about putting all these groups together, sort of acting as a network of people who can actually go out, take this action, work with the council, and identify things like these fly tips, what we call grot spots, and actually take action over it. So we're doing our bit to keep Cornwall clean. I mean, I quite often see, like, we go out into a field in the middle of nowhere and people have dumped this stuff there, and you think, why have they gone to so much effort to go out there and chuck a sofa here? You know, surely it would be easier just to actually take it to the dump if it's just one or two things. I understand that there's the commercial ones sometimes.
Yeah,
but
and you wouldn't pay for that either. I mean, it's not. I mean, you might have to pay. I don't know about your local areas, but you know, we have to. You know, if you took breeze blocks, even a couple of them, you have to pay for. But your mattress, you don't have to pay for if you take it yourself.
Yeah. So I just wonder, you know, are people so, and it's the same with just the small, you know, what you call littering, where they're chucking stuff out their car windows. Are they so ignorant that they can just, you know, rather than pick it up and, you know, take it into your house and put it in your bin, that they just want to just chuck it out the window? Because it is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Listen, great to speak with you, James. Thank you for your time, sir. Have a lovely weekend. Councillor James Muster. He's a Cornwall County councillor. I feel really, my heart kind of pings when I hear of communities doing litter picking patrols, because my first thought when I hear that is, who drops the litter? How does anyone ever drop litter? Seriously, you might drop it accidentally. You know, you go for a tissue in your pocket, you pull it out, and an old Mars bar wrapper comes out at the same time. Might happen accidentally. But who drops litter and drops enough litter? I know it's not just one person, by the way. Might be. Enough litter that you have to have litter picking patrols. So you're literally picking up litter after your fellow humans who couldn't be bothered to put it in a bin or just stick it in their pocket and take it home. Which is no hassle, really, is it? I mean, it's like breathing, isn't it? If you're walking down the road and you're eating something, you get to the end of it, you've got the Mars bar wrapper in your hand. You instinctively put it in your pocket. I mean, for me to throw it on the ground is so counterintuitive to anything. The idea that you would do that is a phenomenal aspect of human behaviour to me. I can't fathom how that happened. Genuinely, I know how it happens, literally. But the thought process and what is going on in the psychology, that you would walk down often your own road or a park and go, just chuck that on the floor. When firstly there's likely to be a bin just up the road. But secondly, take it home with you, man. What is wrong with you? It is just such an extraordinary aspect of human behaviour. Never quite worked this one out. This from Neil, he says, councils claim fly tipping costs £1,000 per tonne, but tipping at the council is around £200. Why don't they let them tip for free, paying landfill tax? Council, 800 quid better off. Yeah, I guess if you... It's an interesting thought. How would you put that into action? Ben's in Coventry on fly tipping. Ben, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Far away.
Yeah, in my local area, you have to physically book a time slot to come and dispose of your rubbish at the local tip. But they will only let you come in a car. So you can't come in a small van or anything bigger than your average car, say. So it leaves people with the option of having no other option other than paying thousands of pounds to get rid of such a big bulk. Now, if they were to allow small vans in, maybe to tip more regular, then this problem wouldn't be so extreme.
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? But what makes somebody do it in the first place, Ben? Is it just about money?
Well, into how money is today, that is a big factor of it, yes.
But when you go to as our last guest said, when you, if you're dropping off a mattress, you can, I know some councils like mine, you have to book the tip, you can't just turn up anymore. But others you can still turn up. But it wouldn't cost me to take my mattress there. So why would I put it in the same car, do pretty much the same journey, find a lay-by and drop it off in the lay-by?
That is just pure laziness. That really is, and I totally agree with you in that respect. But like I say, if you've got a big load of rubbish and you've only got a little car, how you can't book multiple time slots at the tip, so you can only go with one set of rubbish at one time.
Yeah.
So it kind of leaves you into the position where it's either going to take me near enough 2 months to get rid of all my rubbish, or let me in a van, let me dump all my rubbish off at once, or it's coming to the point where you've got to wait 4 or 5 weeks to get rid of such a big pile of rubbish.
Yep.
Most people are just trying to get rid of it in other ways. So it's the council that are screwing the council, if you're with me.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of unfathomable, and it doesn't help, of course, that there are extra charges there, and maybe there is another, I don't know, maybe someone's going to pop up on Dragon's Den, Ben, with the ultimate answer to this.
Well, I will definitely be paying some money to that if they have got the answer.
Indeed. Ben, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Amanda says if councils reduced extortionate charges, fly tipping would be greatly reduced. It's a win-win. The only thing I've ever paid to dump off... No, I've paid for a sofa to be picked up, because that's a problem, isn't it? Because you can't take that in your car. I can't remember what it cost now. Probably 20 quid at the time. I bet it's more than that now. So, yeah, I kind of understand that, you know, that you might have to pay something. Not everything could be, you know, counted in your council tax. Where would you stop that? But other than that, the only time I had to pay something was taking some... Was it... It must have been bricks. It can't have been tiles. I had about 4 bricks, and the guy said, "Oh, have you got any kind of hardcore stuff or whatever?" And I said, "Not really." I said, "I've got 4 bricks." He went, "Yes, it's like 50p a brick, mate." And I was like, "What, sorry?" And he said, "It's 50p a brick." And I thought, I know what's happened here. I meant to have gone on the website and paid for it. And the fact that I haven't paid for it, because I didn't know, and I'm here now, he's going to go, "Right, just remember next time." I thought, he's not exactly likely to have a contactless machine in his pocket, is he? Unfortunately, he had a contactless machine in his pocket, and he whipped it out. "Yeah, here you go, mate, £4. And I had to pay 4 quid for my bricks. So that was a slightly new one on me, but I think that's fairly normal now. But other than that, like, I've taken wood, like a wardrobe, I've just knocked the thing to smithereens, which is quite satisfying for about 10 minutes and then quite time-consuming after that, especially when you kick too hard and your foot lands on something it shouldn't. Or right in your shin, that's the one, isn't it? We've all done it, but yeah, break it up as much as you can. I think there's a lot of people don't do that bit. But sticking it in a lay-by has never once occurred to me, oddly. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Local government is something that is already complex enough for people to try and understand. Half of my mates don't even know they're able to vote on May 7th when it comes to it. You know, there's that much complication when it comes to local government. I don't think it will cut through politically and damage them in the way that perhaps, you know, the opposition hope it will. Local government needs a right good reform to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I say reform in the true meaning of the word there.
I know, don't worry, James. I was about to say local government does need reform. It needs Reform UK.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A little bit 8 minutes to 4. Peter Cardwell here shortly. A little bit of breaking news. A former Conservative councillor, Philip Young, has admitted nearly 50 offences of drugging, raping and sexually assaulting his former wife over a period of 14 years. Philip Young, who's 49, pleaded guilty at Winchester Crown Court to 11 counts of rape, 11 counts of administering a substance with intent to stupefy his former spouse, Joanne Young, who can only be named because she waived her right to anonymity. An incredibly disturbing case, clearly. My goodness. He's pleaded guilty. Sentencing, of course, awaits him. Let's go back to your calls and comments. Wendy says the council have removed a lot of bins in my town and parks. Guess it's too much hard work to empty them. The increase in litter is disgusting. Hence, I organise a community litter picking group once per month, which is amazing, Wendy, but you should not have to do that. Who are the half-wits and animals that are just dropping the stuff in the first place? You get the overflowing bin. That's a problem, isn't it? You see it and you think, I can stuff one more in there. I can easily get a wrapper of a Snickers in. I'll give it a go. And then, of course, people do nappies and all sorts of other malarkey. This one from James in Cardiff. I am a local litter picker. When our local junior school is open, litter is 100% higher than normal. Young mothers have no idea about waste. Yeah, it's parental, really, and fathers, I should add to that, although from experience I would say 95% of any school run is still mums. Yeah, it's parents. You don't allow your kids, surely, on the way home to drop nonsense. Richard is down in London. Reference Donald Trump, Richard. Back to that one. What are you thinking? Hi.
Yeah, just a quick one, Donald.
Donald?
There's a compliment for you, Ian.
Yeah.
Clearly what he said was wrong and not very nice, but I think the reality is, and before there's too much heat and light from even people like dear old Gully, I think the point here is that the Americans are saying that NATO don't really have any armies anymore, and frankly, with the exception of Poland, I mean, that's pretty much true. Ask yourself a question. Not that long ago, we're broadly the same age group, you and I. You can remember when the British had a presence in Northern Ireland, where we were effectively we weren't an occupying force, but we were to all intents and purposes, Ian. And we had I think 59,000 troops in Germany as part of the British Army of the Rhine. We have an army that could not mount a full frontal assault on anybody for any more than a few days. And Trump said a silly thing. I think sometimes he says too much, and when he says too much, obviously silly things happen. But the point is here, to all intents and purposes, I mean, Poland's got an army of 300,000 people, which, considering it's got half our population,
it's quite something.
It's remarkable. But there's no NATO army that could, I'll put it this way: we couldn't have gone into Afghanistan on our own and taken on the Taliban. We just simply couldn't. We could not have done it.
Sure.
I think that's the point Trump is making. But he says silly things. And
he does, and that's because it's a bigger country with therefore a bigger army.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So the biggest Western country happens to be America, right? I mean, that's just the fact. So it's clearly going to have that implication. And, of course, America has had that sort of unofficial role. And I understand why Trump is trying to redefine, why should we take all the responsibility and pay for everything? It's not fully true, but yes, he's right. He's made people step up to the plate and stick their 10 quid's worth in. I get it. Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. Sally says, fly tipping is a small industry. Folks asking online for people to take their rubbish to the tip for 50 quid. They collect it and chuck it in the lay-by. It's a good point. Steve says, I paid my council £30 to come and collect some chairs. He had to leave them outside for collection the night before. By the time the council came, somebody had nicked them. I was advised when I wanted to get rid of I remember this living in East London, wanted to get rid of a radiator. Somebody said, well, just leave it outside. It will literally be gone because it's metal. It's worth a few quid. And it was true. I think before I got back in my front door, it would have gone, just disappeared. I did once, when I had some work done, have a skip outside and caught a fella going through the skip, Peter Cardwell.
It wasn't me.
Are you sure?
Well, so I would have you believe.
Here's the thing. The skip was on the drive, and he wasn't like at the road end of the skip.
Right,
he was in my garden of the skip, going through it. And I went, are you all right, mate? And he turned around and he went, yeah, all right, yeah. And he carried on.
He just kept going.
It's like, you're in my garden.
I remember I had to leave stuff out. I was moving house and I had to leave out 10 separate items.
Yeah.
And if there weren't exactly 10 items, the council wouldn't take them. And someone came and said, I didn't know this was the thing. And a guy came and said, can I have this TV? I said, well, it's an old TV, it doesn't work anymore. He says, can I have it anyway? I went, yeah, of course, just take it. And then the council came and they wouldn't take the stuff because there were 9 items rather than 10 items because someone had taken the TV. Yeah, we had to ring the council and say, can you come again tomorrow because there are now 9 items. They didn't charge us anymore, which is fine.
Well, because it was like you breached a contract or something?
So
we're only taking 10, mate.
Deeply weird. I don't live there anymore.
That is strange. They're always trying to find new ways, aren't they? Of like, we've got a new bin recalibration coming this year. There's going to be a selection of them, including the dreaded food bin.
The food bin, yeah, it's never nice.
No, it's never nice. It's never a good idea.
It's just when someone says the word slop bucket that it lowers the tone.
Like, what do I put in there? You know, just give it to the dog.
That's it.
Or give the dog to the bin. No, don't do that.
Don't give the dog to the bin man.
Don't do that.
Keep the dog.
Well, unless they're going to adopt the dog.
No, keep the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually once experienced a dog getting run over. The bin men helped the dog, and one of the bin men adopted the dog.
That's lovely.
This
That's
isn't
really
a great
nice.
anecdote.
No, well,
it's relevant to this
was the dog okay at the end of it?
Yeah, they gave it a little high-vis jacket, went out with them every week. Did brilliant. A little scamp. What is going on after 4, Peter Cardwell?
Well, lots of people very angry about what Donald Trump has said, his completely untrue comments about the fact that he believes NATO troops, well, not a fact, quite the opposite of a fact, a lie, that NATO troops didn't go to the front line in Afghanistan, including UK troops. I mean, we know that there were many, I think it's 457